How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Chair Talk. Guys, yesterday I did a video about David d4vd. The 4 that he uses in spelling his name comes from Fortnite, from what I'm being told, because he was a gamer before he became a musician. But as of now, we believe that he may be connected to that young girl right there. Her name is, let me make sure I pronounce her name correctly, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Sadly, her body was discovered, I believe, on September 8th in a Tesla at Hollywood Tow. And we're going to go into all the details of this, but be advised, I did an episode on this yesterday. I was very objective in how I managed that episode, but this episode, not so much. This episode, I believe there's enough to start seeing this big connection between him and her. And it's not even just about we don't even know how she died. I mean, it could be a homicide, it could have been accidental, but also we definitely have a strong potential that he could have also been a predator, because when they first met, she could have been around 12 years old, and there's a lot of grooming here. So we have a lot to explore. We're going to explore the connection, the grooming. I got a lot of questions I got to send Joe. I got a lot of stuff that we're going to cover here. So hopefully by the end of today's episode, we showcase that there is a possible connection, and we also showcase the potential for him grooming her because of her age. But let me get my guest. What up, Joe?
How's everybody tonight?
I hope we're doing. Oh, by everybody, you mean me?
Yeah, you and everybody watching.
Everybody watching. Well, I know I'm good. I can speak for me. Hey, Joe, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, everybody. Lieutenant Joe Pangaro, author, podcast host, criminal investigator, and a guy that loves his country and everybody in it.
Nice. I like that, Joe. All right, let me get ourselves back on. Hold on one second. The screen went a little weird there. Here we go. Am I there? There I go. It's acting a little weird there. There we are. So, all right. So what I would like to do first, if you guys are good with it, is I do want to show you guys a video. The video is coming from News Nation, and the video is going to discuss pretty quickly, it's about 4 or 5 minutes, why hasn't he been charged? So right now, there's a lot of connections. A lot of people think that the connections, they could be coincidental, but there's a lot of them. And there's also a strong foundation for some of these connections, as we will showcase as we go through the show. But first, I would like to show you a video from News Nation that discusses why he hasn't been charged. And what I've been told so far, real quick, is that Dave, right here, David, was cooperative at first, but what I'm hearing now is that he's no longer being cooperative. But let me go ahead and show this video. And guys, again, this is coming from News Nation. So I'm going to mute my side. Joe, if you don't mind, could you mute your side?
Mm-hmm.
In February of 2024, somebody commented on David's TikTok and said, quote, "Waiting for LAPD to get your ass for messing with a 13-year-old girl." Did that somebody know something about Celeste? I want to bring back our panel of true crime podcasters, Lauren Conlon, Pascal, and Shagun Oduoluwu. Okay, I'm going to start with you again, Lauren. Isn't it surprising that we're not hearing anything at all about the investigation into a possible sex crime, given there seems to be ample evidence just online that these two met a long time ago?
Yes, that was my first thought, because normally we see, police arresting their suspect on something else in order to hold them. And this has not been the case. But something I keep thinking about here is that police really do need tangible evidence that they were in a sexual relationship. I mean, you said it though, at this point, her mother has confirmed she had a boyfriend named David. Her brother confirmed it. We've seen a lot online, but I go back to this. I really do believe that police, law enforcement are sifting through all of his devices to confirm this. And something else, Ashley, that I've kind of been asking myself as well is how many people knew about this? How many people either looked the other way or were possibly complicit in their alleged relationship? Because I mean, even the teacher, that video of her teacher saying that he knew that she was talking to the singer David, and also that video or a photo, I'm sorry, of David appearing in a parking lot that's right by Celeste's home, right by her school. He appears to be talking with another student. And listen, the rumor mill is going wild about that photo because now there are allegations that people did know, but they were being paid off. And those are completely unfounded, but I just wanted to point out what was going on in the rumor mill. So yeah, I have a lot of questions about why there hasn't been an arrest yet on, the fact that he could have been committing statutory rape.
I will also say this, a teacher is different than the rest of us. They actually do have a duty to report. It doesn't seem to me that that particular teacher who was online knew anything more than this girl had met a person on social media. It falls on the parents at that point to really find out what their kids are doing. And if they don't come home for the night, get after it, do something about it. But it's certainly not up to the teacher to do that. Pascal, jump into that, by the way. The ages, I know I just read the whole timeline, but it's so overwhelming to even me. Remind us about when they first met and what the ages we're talking about here are.
Well, what we understand is they apparently were talking around the time that David was actually 17 or 18 and Celeste was around 12 years old. There is speculation that maybe they started sending flirtatious text messages or DMs for her as young as 11 years old. But that's still speculation right now.
Well, 11 would be just unbearable. 12 isn't any better, and 13 is awful as well. But I do think about that little moment in the chat room, Celeste in here, and that was so early in the fall that it seemed when she answered Bark that there was a familiarity there, that they may have known each other before. And she, of course, her birthday's September 7th, so she would have been 11 just a few weeks prior to that. Shagun, missing multiple times, and it's possible that the police brought her back. That's what the teacher says. We're not sure if that's what happened, but when she went missing in February the first time, only to be brought back, then to go missing again in April, that it might have been the police who brought her back the first time, which, if that's true, I don't know if you agree with me, it would be insanity that this girl was missing for a year and a half in the very place that she was likely brought back from prior.
Yeah, Ashley, this is the thing that kind of boggles my mind. And again, I don't want to be the hardcore cold journalist that puts a microphone in the faces of the parents. But if your girl, if anyone understands that Lake Elsinore is 78 miles away from Hollywood, how at that age is she getting back and forth to go see this guy, David? Because the Ubers are going to be in the hundreds of dollars. So where was the money coming from? How was she getting back and forth? And if she disappeared and came back, how are you as parents not sending her away to live with relatives? How are you not keeping a closer eye on her? How are you not asking the questions? Who's your boyfriend, David? Where did you go? What happened? Let's get to the bottom of this.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and
All right, let's get us back. So, Joe, I have one more video I would like to show real quick, and then I'll have one more video later on. But I do want to show a video of the teacher that they're talking about, and then I would like to discuss that briefly, but we are going to revisit that later. I put the teacher in because what I'm going to show today, and there's a lot to cover, I'm going to show you all these connections. I'm going to show you all these signs. I'm going to show you the grooming spot. We have a lot to go over. I just want to kind of connect the pieces with Joe, and Joe's got a lot of questions he's going to answer. But I want to just show you the teacher video real quick. It just shows you the teacher after the body was discovered. He shows the class that I guess he knew this girl and that she was going to go see a rapper in LA or whatever his verbiage was. And it's kind of like the dangers of social media. So let me show that one real quick. It's this one right here. All right, let me mute our Joe, if you don't mind. Oh, you are muted. Okay.
Helping now, new details following a grisly discovery in Hollywood. A 15-year-old girl found dead inside a singer's Tesla. Now Fox 11's Gina Silva is digging into their mysterious connection. Gina Silva.
That's her in my classroom in front of...
A teacher is captured on cell phone video telling his students that Celeste Rivas, the 15-year-old girl found dead inside singer David Anthony Burke's Tesla, had been his student and that he knew she had run away a couple of times.
So when I taught her, she met this dude on social media. He was a rapper in LA.
TMZ was the first to report on the teacher's comments.
There's certainly photo and video evidence that she was most likely with David. They were hanging out together. It's unclear if this was a romantic relationship.
Rivas' teacher put out a video, and it may be the smoking gun in the case.
Nima Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, says the teacher's claims are damaging because Celeste was only 13 when she first went missing in April 2024. If investigators confirmed she ran away with David at that time, he would have been 18.
The mere fact that an 18-year-old is in the presence of a 13-year-old who had run away is not unlawful. But if there's any sexual activity, if there is any force or coercion, that could be kidnapping, that could be rape, that could be trafficking. That's the exposure that David has, setting aside the fact that she's now been found dead.
One day after the medical examiner identified the remains in the Tesla as those of 15-year-old Celeste Rivas, LAPD investigators served a search warrant at David's home in the Hollywood Hills on Wednesday night, seizing electronics and computers.
In the back of my mind, you died.
Ironically, David first broke into the music scene in 2022. Romantic Homicide went viral on TikTok. Social media users are now pointing to his music videos, noting that they feature a woman resembling Celeste. There's also one scene showing a body being placed in a trunk.
In terms of incriminating evidence, at this point, it is not clear he did anything wrong. It is his car, this victim, this decedent, and he obviously knew each other. They had matching tattoos, but I have not seen anything reported in the media that he was responsible or is responsible for her tragic death.
Former prosecutor, now criminal defense attorney Dimitri Gorin, says while the court of public opinion may already believe David was involved in Celeste's death, proving it in court will be far more difficult.
A plausible reason of what happened possibly is that she had access to his car. He travels the world, and somebody, one of her friends, somebody else, harmed her and put her in the car.
David was supposed to perform at the Greek tomorrow night.
So there's a lot here to discuss, Joe. Before we get into the main dialogue, I want to run two things by you. First, does the teacher, if the teacher heard that this was happening and possibly an 18-year-old person coming to the school, maybe the Celeste trying to run away, should he be reporting something like that?
You would think morally he would. He's a teacher, and we know I've been around a lot of teachers. They love these kids normally. They care about them. They really want to try and do the right thing by them. You have a 13-year-old girl and an 18-year-old guy is coming around. You would think you would mention it to the principal. Hey, are we good with that? Is this guy coming into the school? Is he visiting? Or call the parents. You realize, this guy showed up. He's 18 years old. You know anything about it. You think morally that would be the easiest thing for that teacher to do.
Right. And then, okay, so I'm going to read this and we'll get to our first question. So a little background of the case. So on September 8, 2025, Los Angeles authorities made a discovery that would send shockwaves through both the music industry and the small community of Lake Elsinore, California. At an impound, this is the impound right here. It's called Hollywood Tow. Staff investigating the source of a foul odor after calling for police and whatnot, opened the front trunk of a Tesla. Inside were human remains. The human remains, days later, the coroner identified the victim as 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who had been missing since April 2024 she had vanished when she was only 13 years old. And we're going to go through all this backdrop. By the way, her body was discovered a day after her 15th birthday. So I believe her birthday was September 7th. And when they discovered her on September 8th, she had just turned 15. Now, the Tesla was registered. So this is the Tesla. That was registered to David Anthony Burke, known worldwide as D4vd, or David, a 20-year-old musician whose career exploded in 2022 with viral hits on TikTok and who had since signed to Interscope Records. It's going to be interesting. We'll explore a part of that later, too. What's confirmed so far is straightforward. Celeste was identified through dental records. The cause of death is still listed as deferred, and Burke's representatives say he is cooperating with investigators. But I just found out on my way home that they're saying he's no longer cooperating. That I'm not saying he's being resistant, but I guess he's nowhere to be found or he's gone incognito. But again, that hasn't been confirmed. What has been confirmed is he was once cooperating, but then there's some talks in some of the podcasts I listen to that's saying that right now he's pretty much gone off the grid. But again, I don't know how true that part is. I do know, though, at one point he was cooperating. But beyond those facts lies a swirl of unanswered questions, rumors, and troubling patterns. So, Joe, first question for you is when investigators find a body inside a vehicle registered to a public figure, and I put that in there for a reason. What are the first steps they take to secure the scene and begin establishing whether that individual had knowledge or involvement?
All right. So when you say a public figure, that could be, you know, like in the case of this young man, he's a rap star. People know him. He has high profile. What you want to be careful of is having that profile overtake the case, cause people to say things or do things or get involved with things that they shouldn't. So you would secure that location, and then you'd want to begin investigating quietly. You know, I wouldn't go on the news and say this guy's car, because you don't know who had the car, who was in charge of the car. I think the one person in that video said, you know, he was out traveling. So who had the car? You know, who had the rights to have that car? Why did it get towed? Where was it? How long it was there? So when you have a celebrity or somebody involved like that, you're also going to have heated pressure from the media to want to know more. And just like we all heard, there's rumors, there's all kinds of things going around that are confusing. People don't know the law. They don't know the truth. They don't know what's going on. So you can certainly have a circus atmosphere, which can damage your investigation. So myself personally, I wouldn't want to go jumping out there that, hey, this is a celebrity's car she was found in. I'd want to investigate first.
Yeah, and it's great that you said that, because as you're looking through the podcast and all the stuff on YouTube, I follow a lot of YouTube stuff. Everybody's like, well, why hasn't he been charged? Why hasn't he been charged? So there's definitely going to be a rush because people see everything. They see it as not just coincidental, but facts. And obviously, as an investigator, you need facts. You need something that can establish some level of probable cause that goes way outside what the public may believe is a direct connection, because again, law enforcement is going to have ways of finding out if stuff is valid or not, where people are just throwing stuff on the internet and we really don't know if it's valid or not, but people, they don't really follow the facts. They follow the person who's delivering it. And in some cases, that's not always the best idea. So I have Celeste's story is a bit more complicated here because she had run away from home at least once before her final disappearance in April of 2024. Again, let's get Celeste again. There she is. Reports suggest that during this earlier runaway episode, she may have been in communication with a rapper named David. So that's your first connection. But again, coincidental, we don't know. She had met him online. So again, he did have a big online platform. He used to run on Discord. Used to be a video gamer before he went into music. According to a teacher according to a teacher's later recollection on TikTok, Celeste confided that she had gone to be with him before eventually returning home. So there is a connection there, maybe. So that first runaway matters because it may mark the earliest stage of contact between Celeste and David Burke. It also fits a possible grooming pattern. I put it in there, guys. It is what it is. An initial attempt at control and secrecy, testing whether she would leave home, followed by a return before more permanent separation. Now, here is where law enforcement practices come under a bit of scrutiny, for me at least. In many jurisdictions, repeated runaways, especially teenagers in their early teens, are often classified as low risk. The assumption is that these minors will return home on their own, and so cases may not be pursued with the same urgency as abductions. But that approach creates blind spots. For a child who is being groomed, every runaway is a warning sign, not a routine occurrence. If Celeste's first disappearance had been more aggressively investigated, authorities might have been able to uncover who she was meeting and intervene before things have escalated. The reason why I put that in there is because they tell you very, very little of that first runaway. They just tell you that she ran away and then she came back. They don't tell you who she ran away to. They don't tell you how long she was gone. They don't tell you if they made an effort to find out who it was that she was running away to. So her family later said Celeste had a boyfriend named David. Whether that David was Burke or someone else has not been confirmed. But when viewed alongside the teacher's account, the timeline points in a troubling direction. Finally, at the time of her discovery, investigators noted that Celeste had "sh" tattooed on her finger. That's SHHH. The same tattoo Burke has in the same location. So let me show you. I have a picture of that tattoo as well. I think it's this one. You can see it on his inner finger. It's SHHH. Matching tattoos of this kind strongly suggest intimacy, secrecy, intent. But mind you guys, as we discussed in the last show, I could just be a fan of his music and I wind up mimicking everything he does. But with that said, I said that in last show. This show, I'm going to be a little bit more different because I've starting to see the connections. And I think these are a lot more than just coincidental. So I got 4 questions for this section here, Joe. So first question, in cases where minors repeatedly run away, how does law enforcement balance treating it as a routine runaway case versus suspecting grooming or exploitation?
Okay, so we have to look at a reality of the police agencies that get the reports. Some agencies can be small and be absolutely amazing. And you can have big agencies that are not that good. It all depends on the skill set of all the officers, the leadership, how much they value training and get people ready. So one of the things I found in my career was that there used to be, and I guess in some cases it was true, you'd go to report somebody missing and you'd be told, well, how do you know they're missing? They got to be gone 24 hours before we can do anything. So a lot of that was real, whether it was policy or whether it was just, the cop at the door saying, what are you talking about? Kids are runaway. She'll be home tomorrow. Does that happen? That happens in, I would say, 90% of the cases where these kids take off. I see them all the time on social media. Have you seen Muriel? She's missing. Little Bobby is missing. And it's like, okay, do I hit that share button to see? And then before you can get to it, you say, oh, he came home last night. Everything's okay. In most of the cases, as kids start to develop into young adults, you don't know what's going on at home, what's going on in their personal life, and they decide they're going to take off. They go and they stay out. They stay overnight. They could be testing boundaries. They could be partying. They could be recalcitrant children who just don't follow rules. So what do police do with this? I've created a course called Missing Person Investigations for exactly this reason. I have seen lots of agencies not take it serious enough in the beginning because, well, especially if the kid has run away 3 or 4 times. Then they say, oh, the kid's run away. How much effort are we going to put into this? How much resources do we put into this? When the last 4 times, the kid came home the next day and we're out there running around, knocking on doors. And I had to say, stop. Even in my own agency, we didn't have, the see you in 24 hours, but we had officers going out and taking a report for a missing person and then coming back and turning in the report. And then the sergeant would look at it a couple hours later. Is there anything to put out a teletype? Do we have enough information? They might be here, might be there. Nobody was actually investigating, right? And I started to see that and say, now, wait a minute. We need to follow up on these because when you first get the report, that's where the investigation is hot, so to speak. Even if the kid's been missing 3 days, you just found out about it. You want to find out, interview those people who reported the person. Who did they see last? Where's their phone? Where do they hang out? You have to do the investigation because in, say, 1,000 of these, and 3 kids end up dead because they didn't come home, and you could have maybe prevented that death, that's absolutely worth it. So we see the similar kind of thing in domestic violence incidents. How many times any cop out there will tell you, they all know that there's people in their community that they're at their house constantly. They're at each other's throat, these two. He beats her up. They lock him up. He goes in. She cries. She goes to court, drop the charges. I love him. And he goes home. Now, that's about a bigger cycle of violence that we don't talk about enough, and we should. But the reality is you get sent to that call, and it's like, oh, here I go. And now with mandatory arrest, when you see a mark, she's got a mark where he slapped you. You got to arrest him. You got to bring him in. You're with him all night doing all the paperwork. And the next day, she dismisses the charges. So people have a tendency to see these, and I'm trying to say it the right way, these nuisance kind of investigations as exactly that. This is a nuisance. The kid will be home tomorrow. You know how much paperwork I got to do? And we have to get away from that. We have to investigate. And I know a lot of agencies do not have the personnel to spend that much time on a simple thing, especially if it's a person who ran away several times. But we owe it to them. We have to find a way to do it in our agencies, which is why I just recently created this class. And it was requested of me by one of the police academies around here. You know what? We're seeing a lot of these missing persons, and people are calling saying, we're not sure we're doing the right thing. So they asked me to create a class, and I am, because I think there's a huge need for this. We have to investigate more thoroughly, more completely. We have to be more responsive, even if it's just a regular runaway. In this case, young girl's dead in the trunk of a car.
Yeah, and it's unique because it's like, okay, is she running away from something? Is she running towards something? Is it a combination of both? Or is it someone who has groomed her enough to want her or to push her to run away from something, to run towards them? And I think it is something that should be looked into. Now, granted, that information of what happened in April when her first runaway, it's just, there's not enough information out there. So whether they followed through and we just don't know about it, or maybe there's a chance there's no information out there because they said, hey, she's home. Let's put this one to rest and let's move on to the many other cases we got. And Joe, when information surfaces on platforms like TikTok, how do investigators verify whether it's reliable and useful in the investigation?
Well, Anthony, it's like anything else to find out if information is reliable. You have to go investigate it. So how hard is it to see, I'm on TikTok, right? And I get on there and I see, oh, this person followed you, and you click on it and you get a little bit of information. It doesn't say where the person lives. I can message them and see if they'll respond to me. But for an officer to get, you could have people all across the country that might know something about this. You don't know that. So the first thing you have to do to find if it's reliable is try and find the people, the principals that are involved with this, and actually talk to them. Do you know this girl? Do you know this guy? Do you know anything about the relationship? Now, going through all of her social media is going to provide a lot of clues. We're going to be able to see, who was she talking to a lot? Who did she speak to a lot? Does she have a best friend? Does she have someone she would have confided in other than her parents to say, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this guy and he's calling me and I'm going to go visit him? All of that, it's footwork. It's detective footwork. Whether you're a patrol officer or a detective, you have to, when you get that report, you got to start following up and find out these basic answers so you can start to develop some kind of an investigative hypothesis. What happened here? Right off the bat, just what you're talking about. Did she run away on purpose to go with this guy? Is he grooming her to come along? Was she in starstruck and this guy was just, okay, it's a fan, I'm new at being famous or whatever? We don't know any of that yet. All we know is she ends up in his car, she's deceased, and we got to figure out how this young girl ended up dead, who did what.
And I like how you said starstruck, because some people connect to that fame for many reasons. It could be infatuation, and then once that person gives them attention, it could be they could get that person to do whatever they want, to some extent. So it may not even much grooming, besides the fact that he looks to have a successful career. Joe, if a first runaway is tied to contact with an older individual, how should investigators and child protection agencies respond differently to prevent escalation later? Okay, so one of the things that we're looking at is when you're talking about younger people. Now, 12 is young. That's really, really young. But if a 12-year-old was involved with a 14-year-old, you'd say, all right, they're pretty close together. That's like a Romeo and Juliet kind of a thing.
You have a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 18-year-old. That is a huge gap in age, right? That's like really big. So as an agency that looks after the children or the police, I would look at that right off the bat, and I'd say I'd be suspicious. And what's this 18-year-old doing with this young girl? Now, that being said, we know that the young kids run away from home all the time. She's out there near Hollywood, right? They go to Hollywood. They leave their homes to be stars in Hollywood. And they get dragged into prostitution. They get dragged in all because they're going to be stars, or they're going to chase down, the rock star or whatever. So when we look at that initially, the police should be suspicious when that age just doesn't seem right. The Romeo and Juliet thing, I get that. A 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, they're separated by the age, but they're not that separate. Girls have a tendency to be more mature, boys less mature. So maybe they're compatible mentally, so they would talk to each other. You got a 12-year-old and a 17, 18-year-old. That is a huge difference in thought patterns, thinking, lifestyle, all of that. So law enforcement, if they knew that, that's something that, for me personally, I would have said, okay, this is really strange. There's danger for that girl. Not meaning he would do anything to her. Just because of that big age, she's out of her league. And not only because he's a star, I mean, out of her league, he's older. He has more experience. He's got more lifetime on the planet than a young girl who's 12 or 13 years old. So I would be immediately concerned about that. For the social service agencies, that should have been ringing a bell for them, saying, we need to get involved here, start talking to the parents, talk to everybody, because of that massive age difference.
Yeah, and I was just looking up Celeste's infatuation with Burke, what's with the celebrity appeal. And I had 4 things I think make sense here. He wasn't just a random older teen. By 2022, 2023, Burke was blowing up on TikTok and Spotify, making him accessible and famous at the same time. Accessible and famous. That's key. For a 12, 13-year-old, that kind of direct contact with someone admired by millions could feel intoxicating. We kind of said that. His music spoke to feelings of loneliness, secrecy, and obsession, which may have mirrored what Celeste was experiencing as a young teen with the history of running away. She might have felt he understood her. His branding, soft-spoken, shy, wearing Hello Kitty gear, which I may have a picture here. She was a big fan of Hello Kitty. We'll talk about that in a bit. Made him seem approachable, almost boyish, which could blur the lines between peer and adult in her eyes. And for a vulnerable teen, the idea of being chosen by a rising star could feel like validation, fueling a sense of connection that outweighed the obvious risk. Joe, one last question here for this one section, but I think you may have answered it, so feel free if you have to add anything else to it. How does the low-risk runaway classification affect the urgency of police response, and does it sometimes lead to missed opportunities to protect vulnerable children? I think you touched on that.
I did. And I'll just sew it up in a bow. It does. It's a reality when we have runaways that happen all the time. And we don't always take it serious enough. And we have to look at it. We have to have it as a policy, right? Your policy has to be runaway comes in, just like domestic violence. The reason we had to have the laws change in domestic violence that says if you show up and you see an injury, you must make an arrest. Because in many cases, cops went, nobody wanted to do nothing. Okay, you don't want to do nothing, I'm out of here. And then people would get killed. Well, these missing persons have got to be raised up to, it's a missing person. It's important, especially if it's a young person. You know, what happened to them? They do get stolen. They do get raped. They do get murdered. So if a young person is missing, we have to devote the resources to investigating it properly from the jump.
Now, this part's critical. We want to talk about when they may have met. This will establish a timeline that shows you a bit of the age difference. And this is central to what's also being looked at right now, which was funny because I think a lot of people may have overlooked it when they saw it was a murder case and they just, oh my God, we had someone murdered, or possibly it's not a murder case. I apologize. I'm just thinking of how the body was discovered. A dead body.
It's a
dead body found in a trunk, right? So everybody was focused on that, but then now the age is starting to become a big part of the discussion. So speculation online and in media reports places the beginning of Celeste's connection with Burke between 2022 and early 2024. If accurate, Celeste would have been between 12 and 13 years old, while Burke would have been between 17 and 19. This period's critical because between these years, Burke's career exploded from making Fortnite videos with self-produced music to going viral with Romantic Homicide and signing with Interscope Records. By the way, guys, just so you know, he was a video gamer at first, and then there was some rumored, or what I'm being told was that he was getting a lot of copyright concerns with the music that he would make or that he would put on for the montage of videos that he would make for his video game. So he wound up making his own music, and that's what turned into this viral obsession, which, to be honest with you guys, it's not that hard to go viral on TikTok with music. And they say the 4 in David is for Fortnite. All right, so his sudden rise to fame. Sorry, let me get a drink of water. His sudden rise to fame gave him wider access to fans, including through Discord servers, TikTok, and Instagram. That expanding reach may have been the bridge that brought Celeste into his orbit. That makes sense to me. Several pieces of information, not yet confirmed by law enforcement, but widely reported. And as I said today, I've been doing some research. The first show I did a couple of days ago, I was very objective. This time, I'm just going to kind of look at things that are just being reported and accepted. So now I'm leaning on the source of who's reporting it. So this sketches out a possible points of contact. So in October 2022, they got Burke appeared in a Discord chat asking, is Celeste in here? And received a reply from someone named Celeste. If this was Celeste Rivas Hernandez, she would have been just about 12 years old at the time. Again, I don't know if that's the Celeste. There's supposedly another Celeste, or it could be any other Celeste, but that's the first thing people are taking note of. This could be that Celeste, definitely something of interest. In January of 2024, Burke appeared on a live stream with a girl who resembled Celeste. On camera, she said, "We need to delete this," after which Burke asked moderators to delete the video and even the full stream. Let me show you that. I do think this is her, actually, because as you're watching the videos, the girl looks like her, but you could see she's wearing like these disguise glasses, it looks like, and a hoodie. I actually have the video of that. Let me go ahead and show you this video. I think Joe's already on top by muting it. All right, so let me mute myself. Hold on. Let me enlarge this.
Yo, wait.
Oh, look at answer that one. That's so mean if you don't answer.
Which one? What's good, David? Big fan, mixed family. Oh, thank you, Mitochondria.
I gotta sound with him if you even. We need to delete this.
Maz, can we delete all VODs? And then as soon as the stream ends, delete the stream too?
So again, that's extremely interesting because she quickly said we need to delete this. He made sure that, hey, we delete the live streams because someone could have recorded it while it went on live. And then I think that could have been because at that time, even though it's January of 2024, she didn't really do that small runaway. She did run away briefly sometime in February, and I believe came back sometime in March. Somewhere, I'm hearing somewhere around Valentine's Day, and came back maybe a week or two later, but that hasn't been confirmed date-wise. But I do know what has been confirmed is the runaway right before her death, which was in April of 2024. So if this video was done in January of 2024, I think the only thing that they're trying to protect here is the fact that maybe she could be underage. And, you know, basically that could expose a connection or a relationship. I'm just guessing. All right, so in January 2024, we talked about that. That's the live stream. If that date's correct on that live stream. So that's what I got. But let me know if you guys know something different. So around the same time, TMZ published a photo placing Burke in Lake Elsinore parking lot, just minutes from Celeste's home. While not verified by law enforcement, the image fueled speculation that his connection to her extended beyond the digital realm. TMC's been really on top of this case. In February 2024, a TikTok comment warned Burke. So on TikTok, I believe, or Discord, one of the two, but I think it was TikTok, someone put into his comments, waiting for LAPD to get your ass for messing with a 13-year-old girl. So that was put somewhere in one of his social media comments. And by March of 2024, fans were openly speculating in online chats that his girlfriend's name was Celeste. So right here, real quick, before I give you the question, Joe, is there's a lot of things here connecting him. Again, still, you know, maybe circumstantial, I don't know. But there's a lot of things here right now that are connecting him to this young girl, Celeste. Now, however, this timeline's complicated by reports that another young woman named Celeste was also in Burke's online orbit. Some fans insist that not every reference in chats, rumors, or even in music points to Celeste Rivas specifically. For investigators, this distinction is critical. Verifying which Celeste was actually in contact with Burke could mean the difference between speculation and admissible evidence. Claims from Discord users suggest that by 2022, she was already being mentioned within his server. If true, and if this is the Celeste, that means other people in his online community may have been aware of her presence long before her disappearance. For investigators, that kind of digital footprint can be invaluable, not only to trace communication, but to identify witnesses who saw grooming in real time. By April of 2024, the rumors had grown stronger. The teacher's statement that Celeste ran away to meet a rapper she met online underscores the possibility that this was not just a digital interaction, but a real-world connection. The timeline also raises a difficult legal question. If Burke was a minor himself when contact began, but the relationship continued once he turned 18, the law would still view his involvement with a 13-year-old as criminal. This transition from minor to adult does not erase culpability when the age gap is that wide. While none of this has been confirmed by law enforcement, the potential timeline, a rising teenage musician and a barely adolescent girl, is alarming. It could become central to any sex crime investigation if investigators verify these interactions. Now, Joe, I have 4 questions for this session, section for you. So the first question is, how do investigators piece together a timeline of first contact between a suspect and a victim when much of it may exist only online?
Okay. Well, most things online at the server level can tell us. Now, you can have a recording, and I put it up on January 1st, but I recorded it 3 months earlier. So we can go to them and find out, when did this get put up? Was it a live stream? If it was live streamed, now you have a date and time, and now you can get a much more firmer date. So when we look at these things, they're going to go to all their social media, everything else they were on, every other platform, cell phones, everything. And they're going to do a dump on all of that stuff. They're going to have to look at it all. And then you start to compare it. You know, so there's a saying, anybody who's heard me here on your show a couple of times, when it comes down to this initial part of figuring these kind of things out, you have to have this, investigative hypothesis. What do I think happened based on all these things? And as you get more and more facts in each bucket, that can lead you in the direction of what you actually have. So there's a saying called Occam's razor, and I just love that, Occam's razor. I heard it in the movie Contact, and I had to look it up years ago. Occam's razor means when all things are equal, the simplest explanation is usually true. That's how life usually works out. Not always, but it's usually works out, the simplest explanation. So when you had that little clip of them talking, if they can get a timeline for that, talk to their friends, talk to their family, where was it videoed? Is there more video? Was there other clips? And you can put a timestamp on that. Now you know the exact time and date. You can tell how old everybody was. When we look at that, her parents or somebody who's very close to her, familial-wise, should be able to look at that clip and immediately say, that's my daughter, right? If it was my son or daughter, I'd be able to look at that and go, yeah, that's definitely my son or daughter, even though they got funny glasses on and some kind of a hoodie or something. So that would bring that to an end right there. And they probably have done that. That's such a simple thing, an obvious thing. You'd say, this is a video we have. Is that your daughter? And I've seen people when they see these kind of things, they look, and when they're trying to protect their kid, depending on what it's about, they'll be like, no, I can't really tell. And you can tell by their body language and their response that they absolutely know it's their kid, but they're trying to protect them. Other times they'll look right at it in a missing person. Yes, that's her. Are you? And then, of course, you have to follow up to be sure, because there's hope, there's desire to find the kid. Could it look similar? Right. A lot of people can look similar, but you'll see that immediate oh my gosh, that is my son, that is my daughter. Where was that picture taken? So getting these timelines really means going and investigating, getting all that data, putting it together, and then talk to as many people as you can that may know everybody in that video and find those timestamps. Timestamps live forever.
You know, I know before you mentioned there's a gap in age. Again, it's not a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. At this point, it's a 12, 13-year-old with an 18, 19-year-old. So if contact began when Burke was still a minor, but continued after he became an adult, how would that complicate the legal picture for him?
Okay, so California is unique, and this is where this took place in California. California's age of consent is 18, which means anybody under 18 cannot consent for any reason. And any person 18 or older who engages even consensually with somebody under 18 is considered statutory rape. Now, in New Jersey, our age of consent is 16. So a person who's 16 years old can have sex with anybody they want, other than someone who's in loco parentis, a church leader, a school leader, someone who's in a position of authority, someone in a prison, something like that. You can't. Then that goes out the window. But that age of consent means once you hit 16, you can have sex with anybody you want. California, 18, and even in New Jersey and many other states, they have that Romeo-Juliet law, where if I have a 13-year-old and they're with a 17-year-old within 3 years, we actually sit there and we count the days. What is his birthday? What is her birthday? And we start, and it's within that 3 years, then you're good to go. If it's 1 day past that, then it makes it criminal, right? So how this this really is pretty cut and dry. If there was sexual activity while he was, even if he was 16 and she was 13, you still can't do it. And that's what's unique in California. New Jersey, like I said, and many other states have that Romeo-Juliet, because, you know, young kids get together, 17, 13, 14, within that timeline, you're okay because they're young. They're just involved in their emotions. California says no. If this person over here is 17 and this person is 16, they still can't have sexual relations, even if it's consensual. What California does, though, is they will count out the time and figure out the exact difference. And while it doesn't ameliorate the charge, most of those kind of cases, if it was all consensual, they do a lot of misdemeanor charge, right? They don't go for the felony unless it was forced, unless it was, you know, much older than that, if it's not in that timeline. Because people, you're trying to be understanding of human nature, but at the same time, you don't want people taking advantage, right? So that's how it could have an effect on this case. It doesn't matter if he was 5 days older than her. These people underage can't have sex. They're not allowed. It's not in the law.
Yeah, and guys, we're going to cover this again in a little bit as we further down, because I also want to touch a little bit more about how statutory crime is really based on the age. The person cannot say yes, and that even if you're an adult and that person tricked you and they told you they were 18 or 16 and they weren't, you're still the adult. You're held responsible. That's why a lot of people may say, well, I met her at a bar and the bar IDs people, and technically if she had to be at the bar, she should have been 21. Okay, maybe the bar will get hit on the wrist a little bit too, of course, but you're still going to be held reliable because you're the adult. When a potential victim is discussed within an online community like Discord, how do investigators use those digital witnesses and chat records to strengthen their timeline?
Well, first of all, you said the word before, circumstantial. So the circumstantial evidence is sometimes very good. It helps put somebody in a certain place doing a certain thing. And then, of course, we like to have statements. We like to have much more tangible kind of things. But circumstantial evidence like this one, showing them too. If the mother says, that's my daughter, and we have a timestamp, we now know how old everybody was. We know it doesn't mean they were having sex. You can certainly have a kid in your video who's 5, as long as all you're doing is making a video and the parents know all that kind of thing. So when we look at these Discord sites, and we see that come up a lot, there's a lot going on some of these sites where people are meeting up. But you're going to have to, again, get those timestamps, see what's on there, what were they saying to each other. And a lot of times there are lots of people. So you said earlier that there seems to be other people who are maybe aware of this relationship. No doubt about it. Unless they were trying to keep it absolutely secret, But why would you do that? Why would you go online and make a video with somebody you're trying to keep it absolutely secret? So I think there are people out there that absolutely know what was going on here. And then that's when it comes down to sitting in the room with the person. What is his maturity level, right? I know a lot of people that are older and they act like, young people, and not because they want to have fun, because they just, they're not as progressed mentally as they should be. So that's where you would go with that. You'd find that stuff, timestamps, who are they talking to? Then you got to go back and talk to them and go find them. And sometimes the legwork for this, because on these websites, you can be in Ohio and somebody else is in California and somebody's in Georgia. That's a lot for a local agency. Okay, go get on a plane. That's on TV. Go fly there and go figure it out. You make phone calls to the PD in that area, and then you ask those cops to go find this person and interview them and see what they know. And who are you calling on the phone? Maybe they're excellent. Maybe they're not so excellent. Maybe they don't have a lot of experience. So that's where all of these kind of things play into an overall investigation. Now, homicide investigation, if you call South Carolina about a missing person, okay, they might assign a patrol officer, a brand new patrol officer, go knock on the door, see if these people know them. You got a homicide, they're probably going to send a qualified investigator, because whatever you hear, you might find out that that's the place of the murder weapon's there, the killer's hiding there. You're going to send somebody more experienced for something like a homicide. But just a missing person, you're making a phone call. You're not flying to Georgia over a thing like that. You're going to get the local cops there to go do it.
Yeah. Now, I always try to prepare my shows with, just in case, later on if it goes to court, maybe some excuses that people will try to defend the person doing the wrong. So obviously one of the questions here, there's many Daves, there's many Celestes. So when there are multiple individuals with the same name tied to a suspect, how do investigators prove which one was the actual victim referenced in chats, sightings, or songs? That's tough.
Okay, so it is, but if it's on my account or my text message or on my email, it's pretty obvious who it was. Again, we would look at those kind of things. How many times do you grab somebody else's phone to text me and say, hey, can you come on the show tonight? No, you use your own phone. You might use your wife's phone if you're sitting there and don't have yours, but the reality is it's still in your family. We would still be able to talk to you. So we would look for whose accounts were being used, who was talking on them, and then that gives you, again, you're tightening up now a little bit, because I know, it's on Anthony's text message to his phone number, to his cell phone, and he texted this number, which we know is this young lady's phone number. We could be pretty confident that those are the two people that are talking. Does that mean that an enterprising young attorney, defense attorney, is not going to say, well, we have a witness here that'll say she loaned her phone to Mary Ellen constantly. It was Mary Ellen who was in a relationship with him. Will they do that? They'll come up with anything they can to zealously defend their client. And we all know that sometimes if there's a grain of truth or something that looks right, throw it up against the wall, see what sticks. Can I get one juror in that group to go, well, I used to loan my phone to my neighbor because he didn't have one, so maybe that happened, right? That's how the prosecution game is played.
And now I want to move towards something that actually would help investigators. You can actually see in this picture, in the one on my right, you can see him looks to be next to her. Again, we still have to confirm who that girl is, but it looks like looks like her, but it looks like she is trying to protect her appearance, maybe with the glasses and something over her head, but that really does favor her. But with that said, I got, for this section here, Joe, I got two questions for you, but let me go over the sections about Celeste and pictures and videos. So another layer of this case involves the growing online discussion that Celeste may have appeared in content connected to Burke, whether in videos, live streams, or photos. Now, some fans claim they spotted her in the background of a post, like let's say this one right here. And again, we saw the one video from TMZ. Others insist there are unreleased clips or screenshots showing her directly with him. Now, to this point, none of these claims have been confirmed by law enforcement, but still investigators will almost certainly examine any visual evidence because it can offer something digital messages cannot: tangible proof of physical proximity. Unlike chat logs, which can be disputed, doctored, or denied, authentic photos and videos place people together in time and space. If legitimate content surfaces showing Celeste and Burke together, it would undercut any claim that he didn't know her age or identity. Seeing her physically, investigators could compare her appearance, behavior, and context against her documented age. This makes such evidence especially valuable in grooming cases where proving that an adult knew a victim was underage is often the hardest hurdle. At the same time, this is also an area where misinformation spreads quickly. Grainy screenshots, edited clips, or misattributed images circulate online, especially in high-profile cases. Investigators must carefully authenticate whether footage is real, when it was created, and who was present, all before it can be used in court. So 2 questions, Joe, for you on this section. If investigators uncover authentic photos or videos of Celeste with Burke, how does that shift the case compared to relying only on digital messaging?
Well, you're right. If you can authenticate the picture that it's real, they were in time and space together, then that takes away the I don't know her. I don't know that we've had that in this case. We see a lot of circumstantial that they knew each other. We see them talking back and forth. But I made a note here. I'm looking at meeting someone, having someone in your video, laughing with them. Well, none of that is sex or homicide. It's, yeah, did I know the person? Yeah, but I don't know what happened to her. I went to the beach that day. I come home, she's gone. I thought she ran away from me. You have to connect the dead body to the suspect, and that can be done. There's all kinds of evidence that can be left behind forensically. We can find that stuff. That doesn't mean that this guy did it. Maybe one of his entourage did it, because you got hangers on. This guy, all of a sudden, he's famous. And what comes with that is fame, comes with money, comes with girls. That's why a lot of people get into rock and roll, because they get to be famous, they get money, and they get girls. Well, this could have been something where, yeah, he liked this girl. He had her in a video. She's cute, this and that. But one of his buddies hooked up with her and did something terrible. And that's where the forensics is going to bring it all together. But those pictures certainly solidify, yeah, there you were. So don't say you didn't know her, because why would you lie? Right? So this is when you're an investigator and you look at why people say what they say. There's a pattern people usually go through. Wasn't me. I wasn't there. I don't know anything about it. And then as you bring in more evidence and you show them, there's witnesses, there's a video from the 7-Eleven. Okay, it was me and I was there, but I didn't have anything to do with it. Then you get somebody saying, hey, I picked this guy out of a lineup. He had the knife and stuck the guy. Well, it was me. I was there and I stuck the guy with a knife, but I did it for a good reason. Right? So there's no reason for the story to break down. Initially, I would give somebody some room if they're scared to death and they're really not involved, that they would want to just get the cops off of me. And if I can make it just go away because I didn't do nothing, I want it to go away. I've seen people do that. But at the same time, if you have more evidence gathered that there's more to it than you just happen to be in the same house with this girl who got murdered, people start to say, oh, they went together, they went to the room, they did this, I saw them have a fight, right? Now, we go past that when we interview somebody, body language, see how they answer, the words they use, and then we start to see that they're protecting themselves and they're going to go through that process. Wasn't me, I wasn't there, don't know nothing, blah, 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 blah. It was me, I did it for a good reason, or I did it for some other reason. And if you work them properly and you develop a relationship and you become that lifeline, even if they have to tell you they did something, I let them tell me they did it for whatever reason they want, and I go right along with it. And then my evidence will show that that's completely nonsense. And then I would go back at them. And in many cases, as investigators will tell you, why would somebody ever confess to something like this? Why would they ever say it? Well, because the investigator, the interviewer, is very good at what they do, and it's a psychological game. And a psychological game is more powerful than a punch in the face. You can have people, the toughest guy on the street, you can have him crying and snotting himself in the interview room and admitting to the most ridiculous things. And you sit there and you say, how could that be? Why would this person do it? And then you start to realize his techniques to it. There's ways to do it. And you control that as the investigator, and you get people to roll over. And the first couple of times it happens, it is pretty shocking. But then you go back and what did I say? What did I do? How did I do it? Where did I make that connection that this person told me one little thing that they couldn't get away from? Wasn't me, wasn't there. I was me, I was there. Oh, you were there. Well, why were you afraid? Were you afraid to tell me because you thought you'd get in trouble? I could understand. Yeah, man, that's what it is. And you start to build that relationship that you're their lifeline, even if they have to tell you they did the bad thing.
And you know what, Joe? I could picture him being very cooperative at the very beginning, because maybe admitting to a surface relationship he had with her. Like, of course, I may have known her. She was a fan. I interacted very surface. But when they start showing deeper connections and then timelines and stuff like that, then maybe he's like, you know what, I better pull back a little bit. I mean, maybe I'll jump at first to show I'm the good guy, and then jump in and be very cooperative, because the questions will just be real easy. But then once it deepens, the connections deepen, and questions asked that are a bit uncomfortable. Do you know about her age and all this other stuff? Well, I need my lawyer now.
Absolutely.
You know?
And that's exactly what happens. A lot of people, if they lie in their real life, and they're used to lying, they're used to fibbing, they're used to, you know, shining people on. When they talk with the cops, they figure, depending on how the cop behaves and the demeanor you take and all of that, and it's all part of the game, is that they might say, oh, I can get over on this cop. Yeah, I'm going to help out. I'm going to do it. And then you start to say things like, well, you know, like Columbo, you know, one more question. And most of you don't know Columbo. Go back and watch the show. He was actually good with his questions. And, you know, one more question. Did you know she was 13 years old? And now, bing, if he was doing the wrong thing and he knew he was doing the wrong thing with a 13-year-old girl, now it's going to be self-preservation. And it's going to be, hey, listen, I was trying to help you out, man. You're trying to pin something on me. I better have a lawyer. Somebody could have came to him and said, dude, I get you want to be helpful, but don't talk to them cops. Are you out of your mind? They're going to get you. And or he actually has a record label. They might have came to him and said, dude, we're giving you a lawyer, right? Because you're representing our record label now. So you're going to have an attorney, and the attorney says, don't say nothing, right? Don't say nothing. Step out. We're done talking to you. The thing is that a good investigator, a good interviewer, if you are in a room with a person, why would somebody waive their Miranda rights if they did it? Well, it's really kind of common. People do it because they think they can. If you ask for a lawyer, that means you're guilty. So I don't want to look guilty. So I'll let you read me your rights. I'll waive them. I'm going to talk to you. And then they start to get stuck in that mud, and they think they can get over on you, and they can't. And it starts to get tight. Either they confess, they shut up completely, or they ask for that attorney because they realize, uh-oh. But I can't tell you how many times I talk to people over homicides with a sexual assault, and they waive their rights, and people would say, nobody would ever waive. I had a judge say that one time. Guy said I typed up a whole statement and made him sign it. And the judge says, I don't know why anybody would waive their rights and make a statement over a thing like this. And everybody looked around and said, are you kidding, Judge? It happens every single day. That's why we do what we do, right? So it's really kind of shocking, but that's kind of the process.
Yeah, and Joe, I have one more quick question to end this section is, what methods do law enforcement use to authenticate visual evidence, and how do they guard against deep fakes, edits, or misleading online claims?
Very interesting. Now, I remember I'm an old school dog. We had actual film that you had to go and get processed, right? So you go to a crime scene and you would take pictures and you would take it to the photomat or whatever it was. You know, we had a camera store in town, and they did all of our pictures for us. And I remember when we went over to digital, and there was a big concern in the prosecutor's offices because everyone said you can fake digital real easy. You can, and could you? Yeah, you can manipulate digital pictures and all that kind of stuff. It took a lot of time before safeguards were built into those things that you could identify a manipulated photo. You could, look at there's a lot of them, but Photoshop, you can put people in and out. AI now, you could take my head and put it over there and put this person over here. It's a lot you can do, but all of that leaves a digital footprint. And if you have a good forensics unit, a good state police unit, whoever you use, they can go in and determine this is a genuine photo or this one's been doctored. So that's how you take all of that stuff, and then you go and have experts look at it and tell you absolutely genuine photo. And here's the 27 reasons why I can say that. Whereas when it first switched over to digital, we had to take digital pictures and film pictures because we were afraid you'd get to court and that lawyer says to the jury, you know how you can, you've seen Adobe Photoshop? These are all Photoshop to get my client. People who had no idea, they don't know the technology. They're going, wow, I heard about that. I heard, yeah, they did that. Those pictures are fake, right? Or you can't trust them. So now there are footprints in the photos that we can actually identify.
All right. Now, I want to go back and revisit David real quick and his rise to stardom, or his rise more so of his persona, because I want to start relating some of his artistic choices to maybe what played out in real life, because they say art could imitate life. Now, granted, alone, it really just could be an artist expressing himself. But again, when you got all these coincidences coming together, it's hard not to see it as fact. And I know sometimes, even though what looks circumstantial on surface, if you get one strong foundational fact, all the other coincidences become just as strong, because they wind up being strengthened by that main anchor. So David Anthony Burke, better known as David, D4vd, was born in Queens, New York in 2005. And let's just show him again. There he is. All right. So again, born in Queens, New York, 2005, raised in Houston, Texas. All right. So he was born in Queens, New York in 2005. Excuse me, 2005, and raised in Houston, Texas. His upbringing blended faith and solitude. He was homeschooled in a Christian household, and he has said this left him feeling disconnected from peers. Those feelings of isolation later surfaced in his music, where longing and emotional distance became recurring themes. I think that's a big draw for people nowadays, to be honest with you. So I could definitely see a 11, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old girl being connected to that, especially at those formative years. His earliest musical influences came from gospel, but as he grew older, he branched into rap, hip-hop, and indie rock. At first, though, music wasn't about chasing fame. It was about gaming. As a teenager, Burke immersed himself in Fortnite montage videos, and to avoid copyright takedowns on YouTube, he began recording his own songs to use as background tracks. It was in that world that he styled his name as D4vd, swapping the A with 4 as a nod to leet speak in online culture. Leet speak is using numbers for letters, so 4 would be the letter A. His sound became distinctive, moody, cinematic, and emotionally raw, blending alternative rock, R&B, and pop. His vocals carried a tone of vulnerability, often exploring secrecy, heartbreak, and obsession. A few examples illustrate how quickly he rose. So you got Romantic Homicide in 2022. It's a viral hit about killing love, blending intimacy and violence. It gained traction on TikTok and has been streamed hundreds of millions of times. Here With Me in 2022 is another song, a ballad about cherishing someone before they slip away, which became a staple in emotional video edits online. And then Sleep Well in 2023. It's a song drenched in introspection, where he sings about nightmares and feeling cut off from reality. Now, by 2023, Burke had signed with Darkroom and Interscope Records. That's the same label that launched Billie Eilish. From what I got, when I researched, I wanted to look up the label. He released 2 EPs, Petals to Thorns and The Last Petals, before dropping his debut album, which is Withered. And that would have been in 2025. Just before the current investigation began, he was playing international shows and celebrated as one of music's most promising young stars. Now, part of his public persona was visual as well as musical. Beyond his moody lyrics, Burke often leaned into quirky, youthful aesthetics, at times even wearing Hello Kitty apparel. So I have pictures of that here, as you can see. For many fans, it made him feel playful, approachable, and relatable to younger audiences. But in hindsight, those same childlike branding choices complicate how people view his image, especially given the allegation that he may have been connected to an underage girl. So it's crazy how you look at things now. At the same time, Burke also crafted a darker anime-inspired alter ego named Atami, which is Japanese for pain. In interviews, he described Atami as an agent of chaos, an evil counterpart who commits crime, while Burke imagines himself as the detective solving them. The figure is often depicted blindfolded, emphasizing secrecy and menace. While many fans saw this as creative role-playing rooted in manga culture, others now view Atami as symbolic of the dual identity Burke may have been projecting: an innocent, isolated teen on one side and a hidden, more troubling persona on the other. Unrelated, but manga. They're like these comic books. Are they Chinese or Japanese? I forget, or Korean, I forget, but they're, I believe, of Asian culture. The books come from one of those areas. I forget, guys. My mind slips on that, but I just want to mention something. Those books have a lot of sexual things in those books. You will see things that are very, very inappropriate to the point where we don't allow them in our facilities, especially around sex offenders, because of what those books showcase. I thought that was just information to toss out your way. I'm not saying that the books are bad. I don't want anybody to get mad at me because there are fans of manga, so don't get mad at me. But there are certain things in those books that we don't allow for our offenders to read, especially if they have compulsions to violence or sexual acts. So the persona he built was that of a shy outsider who turned isolation into music that spoke for millions. The question now is whether that very persona and its alter egos may overlap with troubling behavior beyond the studio. Now, Joe, I got 3 questions you want. First question, in your experience, how much weight do investigators give to a suspect's personal history and artistic themes when evaluating possible grooming behavior? I remember watching a show where they said there was a song that Johnny Cash shot a man. And obviously we know he didn't shoot a man. It was part of his artistic expression. But there have been cases where people have looked at the music and these people are actually dumb enough to write what they've done. And because it's similar to what they've done, the music tends to be some level of, I don't know if you want to count it as a confession or a mission, but what's your thoughts?
Well, I think you said it before. Does art imitate life or does life imitate art? It does in both cases. The artistic expression of the human being is a very deep situation. So, and this is the detective side of me speaking, all right? I was out in the street for years learning about people and watching people. When I became a criminal investigator and started investigating very serious violent crimes and sexual assaults and homicides and things like this, you start to have to dig into what goes on in somebody's head to fully understand the crime, the scope of the crime, and bring all of that out when you're talking to this person. So when I look at that, I would say, yes, absolutely. I would look at their choices. Now you start to look at the age of this person and you say, okay, he was 17 and he was befriending a 13-year-old. Did he feel inadequate? Was he in pain? He said he felt isolated. All of those things can absolutely be true. And that is why he gyrated maybe towards someone who was equally innocent, isolated from the rest of the world, and they could get along. Now, I am not psychoanalyzing this guy. I'm saying these are concepts that you would run through in your head. Is that possible? Look at the music that he's listening to. Listen to the lyrics of what he's writing. I'm a writer. I write fiction, right? I also write music. And I know that you write about what you know, because otherwise it doesn't come off genuine, right? So you write about what you know, and you take that from things that happen to you emotionally, and you can write a power song, a party song, you can write a sad song, all kinds of things. And your own experiences can either be expanded or they can be contracted, and you write that all down as a way to express what you're feeling. So the answer to your question, yes, I would look at all those things that he did before, what he wrote before, the kind of music he looked at, the fact that he's wearing Hello Kitty stuff. Now, right off the bat, you look at that and you go, okay, Hello Kitty is really a juvenile little girl kind of a character. Why is he doing that? Well, maybe he's doing that because he wanted to appeal to that group. Or maybe he's doing it because he feels, like he said, isolated, away, and this is a way of feeling connected. Maybe he watches those cartoons and he sees all those kids being happy, and I want to be like that. The human brain can go through so many different types of changes and movements that when you're a normal, regular person, you sit back and you're not going through anything like that, you can look at the people's behavior and go, that's got to be BS. That's not real. Nobody would think that. Nobody would actually behave like. And the more and more you do this, when you get down into the mud with these people and you're in there and you start to get into their head and you see what they're all about, you start to realize you have no idea what people can and will do, what they will believe, what they will use as a way to connect to other people. It really becomes shocking at first, but as you start to get used to it, it really opens a whole nother world of looking at people. And as an investigator, that's what you have to have. You can't just go, well, this is why, and that's why, and he did this, and she said that, and that's how come. You don't know. You got to get down into that mud. You got to be a part of it to understand it, and then you can be an excellent investigator.
Yeah, and it's funny because grooming, it's got similar interest, some level of understanding, definitely some level of familiarity with exposure. And it's like when you connect that to social media platform that reaches the million, that's mass grooming. That's a super groomer.
Could be, absolutely.
I mean, that is this picture alone now becomes a little bit more freakier to me, or even this one, because is it directed to one? Is it directed to multiple individuals? And then we put him on a platform where he can groom a bigger audience. And that kind of leads to the next question, Joe, if that's all right. If lyrics mention secrecy, obsession, or even name individuals, can they realistically be introduced in court as evidence, or are they typically dismissed as artistic expression?
It can come out in court, not necessarily as evidence, but what it would come out is if you could connect, if his personality is restricted, if he is a sad person, if he said in statements, that's why he did this, that, and the other thing, because he's very sad and he's very down, then you can show a correlation between his creativity, his music. Look at this. He just told us in this interview that he feels sad, he feels down, he feels alone. He felt connected to this girl, this, that, and the other thing, and listen to his music. You can certainly try and draw that conclusion, just like an attorney can throw stuff at the wall and hope the jury picks up on something. You can throw that out there with the caveat that might not be, but it sure seems like this is what he says he is, and we're listening to his music, and that's what we think he is. Now, of course, you would have a psychiatrist in there. A psychiatrist in a homicide case is very common. They go in, they talk to the person if they're willing to talk to them, try and figure out what they're all about, what are their connections. And that psychiatrist could then give a professional opinion on what they think about the lyrics and the music and the personality of the person, right? So it can come out if they continue to talk to you, and you can get to that level of stuff with them.
One more question for this section, Joe. When fans publicly connect lyrics, branding choices, or alter egos to real victims, how should investigators approach that speculation? Does it ever help, or can it harm a case?
Well, we do connect, right? We all have a favorite band. We all talk about, there's songs you heard as a child that when you hear them today, they make you feel a certain way. So that's what branding is. That's what advertising is. That's how we drag people in. You have the show called Tear Talk. That is a brand so that people know what you're all about, right? Mine's Blue Heart Webcast. It's the Blue Heart. I want them to connect to me. So it depends on what has come out in the investigation. When you start to present that to a jury, sometimes it could lead you down a dead end if you don't have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. But it can certainly also paint a bigger picture. So a prosecutor that has a very serious case is going to want to paint not just a picture of what happened. They want to do everything: the background, the foreground, the sky, the emotions in the picture. They want everything in there so they can make their case to connect all of these dots that led this person to do that to that person.
All right, now I got more sections, guys. So bear with me. Thank you, Joe, for your patience on this, because these are serious questions. And me, Joe, we plan to cover every exhaustive angle, and you are rocking it. I know your brain has got to be, tired, but people need to know this. And I think if the right people listen to this, there's a lot of knowledge here that they can apply, that they can utilize, even if it's just to understand the case better. I got to go back now to his music and the potential links to Celeste. So Burke's music, so Dave Burke, once praised for its vulnerability, is now being re-examined through the lens of this investigation. From the beginning, his catalog leaned heavily on themes of secrecy, longing, obsession, and forbidden love. These motives, once interpreted as reflections of teenage angst, now raise unsettling questions when paired with allegations that he was involved with a girl as young as 13. The most direct claim is an unreleased track titled Celeste. According to fans, its lyrics describe obsession and intimacy with the girl by that name. Now, while law enforcement has not confirmed such a song, the mere rumor has intensified scrutiny. But here again lies a complication. Some argue that not every Celeste reference in Burke's art points to Celeste Rivas. Another young woman named Celeste has also been tied to his online world, making it unclear which Celeste inspired the track. For investigators, that uncertainty underscores why speculation can't substitute for verified evidence. Other released tracks now feel different in hindsight. Romantic Homicide grapples with killing love, with imagery of death and heartbreak. Here With Me centers on clinging to someone before they disappear. Sleep Well dives into nightmares and secrets. None of these explicitly reference Celeste, but together they paint a picture of an artist drawn to themes of fixation, loss, and secrecy. Burke's visual persona only amplifies the unease. Both he and Celeste, and we talked about this before, bore the word SHHH tattooed on their fingers, a symbol interpreted by fans as secrecy or intimacy, a pact that went beyond art. On stage, Burke leaned into morbidity, performing with the coffin as a stage prop and selling blood-splattered T-shirts as merchandise. At the time, these choices were brushed off as theatrical or edgy branding. Now, with Celeste's death under investigation, those same symbols feel far more sinister. Adding another layer, as we talked about before, is Burke's anime-inspired alter ego, Atami. He has described Atami as an evil counterpart, blindfolded, chaotic, and destructive, while he himself plays the role of detective, trying to solve the crimes like Tommy commits. To fans, this was once creative role-playing rooted in manga, but in the wake of Celeste's death, Tommy imagery, secrecy, violence, dual identity is being reread as part of a troubling pattern for his art and persona. For investigators, however, music, tattoos, stage props, and even alter egos can't stand alone as proof. Lyrics may be expression rather than confession. Tattoos may be coincidence or fashion. Merchandise and characters may just be branding, but when paired with other evidence, such as digital communication, they help form a narrative of intent, one that could support allegations of grooming or exploitation. Okay, Joe, 4 questions here, okay? First one, when analyzing potential grooming cases, how do investigators weigh creative works like lyrics that may reference or even name a victim?
Okay, so what I wrote down here is when I look at things as an investigator, no matter what it is I'm looking at, the crime scene, a statement, something like that, I try to break it down to its essence. At its essence, what is it I'm looking at? Whether it's a statement or a crime scene or blood spatter, at its essence, what is it? So all of these things that we're looking at, we can certainly easily, I think, listen to the words of his songs, the emotions he's putting forward, and try and find clues there to, was he a burgeoning serial killer? Did he kill his girl? He did nothing. He was just writing emotional songs. I think what I would look at is go to its essence. What is driving that kind of feelings, right? So the lyrics themselves might have nothing to do with anything in life, but it's the fact that he's not writing, Van Halen party type of songs. He's not writing Snoop Dogg party type of songs. He's writing this emotional stuff. You can feel the baggage in it. It's very sad, and I would look at that essence. That is probably more of a part of his personality than that he's trying to tell us what he was going to do. On the other hand, yes, expression. When it comes to creativity, you write what you know. If there is a song out there called Celeste, he might have really liked this girl. He might not have been seeing it as, oh, I got myself a 13-year-old I'm going to take advantage of. He might have felt he connected with this girl. He connected with a soulmate. And we all look at that and go, she's 13, you're 17. She's not your soulmate. But we're not in his world. We're not understanding all his life. And I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm saying you got to understand from his point of view, that could be his soulmate. And he wrote a song about her. I've written songs about girls that I was in love with when I was a rock and roll guy because they motivated me. They inspired me to write about how I felt about them, right? So when we look at any type of creativity, and not everyone is creative, but a lot of people do write. They journal, they keep notes, right? And these are things that we look at in other parts of investigations. When I look at someone who's suicidal often they're very blatant with what they're writing in there. I want to die. I don't want to go on anymore. Blah, blah. And then they can go into a whole nother thing. So expressing yourself either in the old fashioned way of doing it, paper and pencil, we write it down, to writing songs, to going online now and making a video, all of these expressions at their essence are trying to say something that's inside of us. And if we happen to be down and sad and bad and feel like we're missing out on life, that's what's going to come through in our expression. You know, a blood spatter. Of course we can look at that and go, oh, dead girl, blood spatter. He was trying to tell us something. No, maybe it just was, you know, cool looking, tough guy branding. And it turned out this girl ended up dying. So a lot of us can come up with these hypotheses, right? Again, hypotheses, we're putting them in buckets. What do we think? We're seeing things in this evidence without having the whole case. Once we find out what happened to her, then we can go back and look at this evidence and see, is there any other connections to it for real? Like, was she slashed? And now you got the blood spatter pictures. Okay, maybe there's a little something there. Turns out it was a drug overdose. Turns out she slipped going down the back stairs and hit her head and they didn't know what to do with her. Put her in the car. We're getting out of here. They won't know, right? Whatever. Once we know what actually happened to this girl, it's going to help shape all of those other things that you're talking about, that right now we're trying to take these pieces of a puzzle, but the pieces are turned upside down. We can't see any of the picture, and we're trying to put them together and make them fit. And that's a hard way to do an investigation, but I think that's the reality. So we have to look at all of these potential things to help us understand what evidence do we have, what happened, who is the person who did it, why would they do it, how would they have done it. Once we start to put that all together, at that point, the picture usually becomes more clear. Then you start to draw an actual connection to something that somebody said, or something that they posted, or something that they said to someone else. Now you can connect that directly to an action. Until what happened, we have no idea what happened here. We don't even know this guy's involved with it. Like I said, he's out on the tour and he's got you know, hangers on, and they had access to the girl. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, that's why timelines matter, especially when he was touring. Was she there with him? That's going to be interesting during that first runaway. And it's I think some of these questions I have here for this section, Joe, tell me if you feel you covered it or if you can add a little more. Because I have, if a suspect art is tied by fans to a specific minor, can that hold evidentiary weight, or is it mainly valuable as supporting background?
I think that can show background, unless you have people who know, yeah, he knew she was 13 and he didn't care because, you know, they were starstruck lovers and they just knew they were going to wait for each other. You hear something like that, now that's something substantial to substantiate. And what are we going for? They can be friends. They can hang out. They can be in videos. They can't have sex. That's what makes it illegal for him to have sex with her. So that's a crime. So that might be able to connect him to that. If somebody says, oh yeah, no, they knew they were, you know, they couldn't do that. It was forbidden love, but they were going to wait for each other.
And then I think kind of touching on, but let me know, do investigators ever use symbolic elements like matching tattoos, macabre stage props, or alter egos such as Tommy to help establish intent, even if they can't carry a case on their own?
Yeah, I think you have to look at all that stuff. You know, stage props, I would give that less. The tattoo, now here's a couple. The tattoo, either they were together and they were madly in love, and that means something to the two of them. Don't tell us about anybody about us, or be quiet in that back room where we were. There could be some kind of insider joke to that.
Well, their whole relationship would have to have been a secret anyway.
Yes, you would think. But if he had that on his finger for 3 years and she saw him on other videos with that and she just was in love with this guy, she might put it on her finger.
Could you see that?
Them doing it together.
I know it's crazy, but I was thinking about this tattoo, and being that maybe I think she understood, he understood that this relationship, maybe because of age, whatnot, couldn't be out there like this. So I think also the shush could symbolize the fact that this relationship has to be in secret, or it could be also a level of control that he had over her. Don't tell nobody.
Could be, absolutely. And we won't know that. We can't talk to her, but you know, maybe she wrote something down. Maybe she told somebody. So in a series, in a understanding of sexual assault investigation, and in some other things, but sexual assault investigations, one of the people that we look for, a particular witness that we look for to talk to, is called a fresh complaint witness. And the concept here is that there are certain times in a human being's life when they will tell the absolute truth. One of them is a deathbed confession. The courts recognize a deathbed statement, a dying declaration, as inherently truthful, because we kind of get the idea you're dying, you don't want to go off into the eternity with a lie, so you would tell the truth. Well, a fresh complaint witness, the concept of that is when something traumatic happens, something sexually happens to you, good, bad, or indifferent, the first person you told about it is probably going to be the closest to the truth. So did she tell her girlfriends, oh my gosh, you see this guy, he's on all these videos and he's in love with me, and oh my gosh, we went back and we made love for 2 hours, oh my gosh. And there's this person can tell you, well, that's what she told me, and you know, I think it was on this day. You can match up their ages. That can certainly be evidentiary, because that's a fresh complaint witness considered inherently truthful. Will the defense attack it? Of course they will, but the courts recognize that. So I think those kind of things are important as to, you know, what's that tattoo all about? If he had it for 3 years and she saw it and just wanted to be like him, look what I did one just like you. Okay, that could be an immature response. Or did they do it to show their love? How many people do that? They get tattoos, they get jewelry with a broken heart. And
it's trending. It's popular.
Yeah.
It's on TikTok. Ultimately, if he's on TikTok, it's on TikTok.
Right.
All right. So this is probably the big heart of the dialogue here. It's the investigation so far. So Joe, I really need to lean on your expertise on these next group of questions here. So the LAPD robbery homicide division is leading the case. Their first challenge was the condition of Celeste's remains. By the time she was found, decomposition was so advanced that the coroner listed her cause of death as deferred. This means investigators cannot yet say whether she died from homicide, overdose, neglect, or another cause, like you mentioned. With physical forensics limited, detectives have turned their focus to digital evidence. Reports indicate that investigators are reviewing Discord messages between Celeste and Burke. If confirmed and authenticated, these logs could prove not only that they communicated, but that he was aware of her true age. Social media speculation goes further, claiming that members of his Discord server openly discussed Celeste as being underage as far back as 2022 to 2024. If accurate, this would suggest that awareness of her age was not hidden but present in the online community around him. But there's another complication, ambiguity over identity. At least one other young woman named Celeste, as we mentioned, has been linked to Burke's online circle. That raises the possibility that not every Discord mention, live stream appearance, or even song reference was tied to Celeste Rivas Hernandez. For investigators, this makes authentication doubly important. They must prove not only that messages were real, but that they involved the victim in this case, not someone else with that same name. For law enforcement, screenshots circulating online are not enough. To make this evidence stand in court, they will need to authenticate the logs through forensic imaging and subpoena the Discord. Tie accounts to real people, like you mentioned, using IP addresses, email signups, and device information, and confirm age awareness, meaning they must show Celeste identified herself as underage and that Burke or whoever controlled his account continued the interaction anyway. Digital forensics has advantages here. Timestamps are immutable, server logs are traceable, and chat histories can be preserved directly by platforms. But there's also a risk. Public speculation moves faster than evidence, and investigators must guard against false or manipulated screenshots being treated as fact. Kind of touched on that. If investigators confirm Discord or other digital communication showing Celeste was 13 or 14 at the time, and that Burke acknowledged this, that would represent some of the strongest evidence possible in building a grooming or statutory case. Now, I want to talk about the Tesla parking history. Another critical piece of the investigation is the Tesla itself. The vehicle was abandoned in the Hollywood Hills, where neighbors say it had been parked for weeks before being towed to an impound lot in Los Angeles. And it's called Hollywood Tow right there. Tow records later placed it near Mansfield Avenue and Romaine Street in Hollywood, where it was impounded after complaints of a foul odor. It was only once the car reached the tow yard that workers opened the trunk or front trunk and discovered Celeste's remains. For investigators, the parking history is more than a footnote. It may hold answers about when and how Celeste died. Parking tickets, license plate reader data, and neighborhood surveillance could help establish when the car was left there and whether it was moved. If the Tesla sat untouched for a month, that narrows the window of when her body was placed inside. If it was moved at different times, that could suggest multiple people were involved or that concealment happened later. The Location also speaks to intent. Abandoning a car in a neighborhood where it would draw complaints and eventually be towed could indicate panic or a crude attempt to distance oneself from the evidence. On the other hand, if the vehicle was simply deserted, it might reflect a lack of planning or desperation. Either way, the parking history is a crucial element in restructuring the timeline. Now, Joe, for this section here, it's your call, because I know the interview is lengthy, but I'm still on your time. So take as much time as you want. I want you to make sure you get all the information out that you feel you need to get out. So don't worry about me. I just want to make sure I impose on too much of your time.
Oh,
but
good.
For this section, we got 6 questions. Okay.
Shoot.
Okay. So first question: how do investigators authenticate Discord or other chat logs so they're admissible in court? We answered that, so don't worry about that one. We pretty much went over that. Remember, these questions are coming from people that send it my way. Tell me what question maybe we could, if we need to revisit, let me know. If a victim clearly states their age in messaging and the suspect continues communication, how damaging is that for the defense?
It can be. If in this case, if you're talking about, crime of friendship is not a crime. Does it look bad? Does it look, what's he doing hanging out with this young girl? Once you establish a sexual relationship, then knowledge of that person's age, because you're right, people tell each other all the time. I know for a fact, through life experience, that people will tell you they're older or younger than they are, depending on the situation, because they want something to go a certain way. So if she told him, oh yeah, I'm 13, and they had a quick conversation about it, well, you're too young for me. No, I'm not. I just want to be friends. And then you found out 2 months later they're having a sexual relationship. There you go. That takes all that I didn't know. Now, could they throw that in front of the jury? Absolutely. He didn't know. Look at pictures of this girl. Does she look 13 to you, or does she look 18? He was confused. He was in the club. They must have checked her ID, whatever. It all depends. If one juror says, well, I don't know, she looked 18 to me. If she told me that, I'd believe her. Who am I to check her ID? I'm not a guy, right? So when you look at things like that, that could certainly be a connector to the sex crime, if there was a sex crime.
Yes. And then let's see, what role do IP addresses, device IDs, and server logs play in trying an online account or tying an online account back to real persons? I mean, that's just pretty much it. It kind of triangulates it, right? And you know exactly
whose account it was and when it was used.
Right. And then what rumors when rumors and screenshots circulate publicly before investigators confirm them, how does law enforcement prevent misinformation from contaminating the case?
This is why we don't usually release all the facts of a case. We release just enough to maybe generate a buzz so that somebody will call, hey, I saw that car here. I saw a guy with a red hat drop that car off, because I asked him, are you okay? I thought he was broken down. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. We usually hold back on a lot of facts, because you will also have other people to call up and say they were involved when they weren't. I look at the names. I say, how many Joes are out there? There's a million Joes. How many Anthonys? A million. How many Celestes? All right. It's a popular name, but it's not something you hear every single day. So how do we find out there were 2 Celestes? Well, you can look them up. You can get their IP addresses. You can get their phone numbers. You can match all that stuff back. So how do you look at that? It's much more unique, that kind of a name. So when we're checking all these kind of things, that's something we would find out, who is that other person? What did they have to do with this? Or were they just another fan involved in the case?
All right. Now this question, the other question we covered already. When there are multiple individuals with the same name tied to a suspect, how do investigators prove which one was the actual victim reference? We talked on that a bit earlier.
And I'll just add to that. If I'm talking to a Celeste, and in our things, we're talking about her neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida, and my victim is from north of Hollywood, California, and that is reflected in my conversation, you can pretty much pick apart which one was which.
Right. And then you also mentioned text. It's just stuff that's more specific to that individual. And then I have this, I think was important, and this will wrap up this section part, is how important is the parking history of a vehicle in a case like this, and what tools do investigators use? Parking tickets, plate readers, or surveillance footage to establish that timeline? Because that Tesla, how it's parked, when it was parked, all that stuff, that's I think is essential in this case.
that's essential to the timeline. Who had the car? Who was available to the car? What does the video show you in the neighborhood? I look at this, the fact that we have this young girl so decomposed they can't tell exactly what happened. Well, there are things they can tell. If she was shot, there's going to be bullet holes in the skeleton. If she was stabbed, there could be stab cut marks in the bones. Soft tissue is going to be tough, but then you can do toxicology and find out she had enough fentanyl in her system to kill her, right? So we can look at those things. But how long was that body in the car? What was the general temperature of the area? And you can work backwards based on the amount of decomposition. You can go back and say, well, she was dead for a week. She was dead for 2 weeks in that car. She was dead for a day and a half. Now where that car was can be very important. Did they pull up and somebody jump out? Were the keys with the car? Did another car pull up and somebody jump in? Can we identify those people? Because you might see from somebody's ring camera, this car pull up, and Tesla parks, somebody jumps in it, and it drives. Now you look at somebody's, 7 houses later, and you get a pretty good shot of the road. Here comes that Ford Mustang, and you can see the plate, or you can see 2 people. So you piece all those things together. That timeline of how that car got where it is going to be crucial in who knew what and when and who's involved.
Yeah, and it would be crazy but you never know, because as he said, it could have done it in a rush, but for the person that owns the vehicle, puts the body in that same vehicle right in front of a place where they're staying at. But again, if they are foolish enough to do that, people are like, well, who's dumb enough to do that? Well, they could have been rushed, or something could have happened suddenly that they didn't know what to do or how to react to it.
Right. They're driving around with the dead body of a young girl in the car. How much do you want to do that? Right. You want to throw this thing and get out of there and go. The Son of Sam murderer in New York, serial killer, was caught because of a parking ticket and some smart cop work. You know what I mean? I caught a guy doing a huge multi-million-dollar fraud because a patrol officer was Johnny on the spot, and he gave a guy a ticket, and he didn't like the answer he gave about his address, and he said, where exactly are you living? And he made him give him his address on the back, and the guy didn't know what else to say, so he gave him his real address. As I worked my way through this case, I found that one ticket, and I went to the court, and they produced it for me, and there was an address on the back. I drove there, and there's the guy sitting on the porch. Sometimes it's those little things, that a parking ticket, a license plate reader, a video, a clip, anything can make a big difference.
Well, even Bundy was a road stop, and then when the cop chased him because he did try to run, and the cop held him down, Bundy was like, you have no idea who you just caught, or something like that.
Right.
So I'm going to go I have the career fallout. I got 3 quick questions here, so we're going to kind of go through it a little bit quicker. But Joe, again, I'm just doing it for your time, so if you want to add. So while detectives sift through evidence, Burke's career is already unraveling in real time. This collapse feels like a natural extension of what we already discussed, but his art, once celebrated for its emotional honesty, is now viewed under a darker lens. The same imagery and motives that drew fans are fueling suspicion, and the industry is reacting fast. Within days of Celeste's identification, Burke canceled the remainder of his U.S. tour dates, including major stops in Seattle and Los Angeles. The European leg of his Wither World tour that was set to begin in Norway on October 1st was also canceled, along with other international dates that have been months in the making. I mean, he could have canceled on his own, or the LAPD could have said, you better stay close. The fallout extended beyond touring. The planned release of the deluxe edition of his debut album, Wither, originally scheduled for 19th of September, was suspended. Major brands quickly distanced themselves. I saw Crocs and Hollister dropped him from promotional campaigns, and fellow artist Kylie Ukis announced she would remove, or Kaylee Ukis announced she would remove their collaboration track from her catalog. Even his branding, once part of his allure, has turned against him. The coughing stage sets, blood-splattered T-shirts, and dark imagery that helped him cultivate an edgy persona are now being cited by critics as disturbingly aligned with the allegations. What once said records and merch is now radioactive to sponsors and collaborators. Yet paradoxically, the scandal has fueled a surge in attention. According to industry trackers, Burke's catalog has seen a spike in streams since Celeste's remains were identified. Romantic Homicide had one of its biggest streaming weeks on Spotify in September of 2025, which is the time of the body being discovered in his Tesla, or the Tesla registered to him. That suggested curiosity and notoriety are drawing in listeners, even as his mainstream career infrastructure collapsed. For an artist who only months earlier was being hailed as one of music's brightest young stars, the cancellations represent not just income lost, but a sudden implosion of momentum. They also show how swiftly public perception and industry relationships can shift when an artist is tied to a criminal investigation, even before charges are fled. Hold on one second. All right, Joe. So I got 3 questions here. Let me know. So from your perspective, when an artist faces a criminal investigation, do cancellations and drop sponsorship matter at all to law enforcement, or are they strictly public relation fallout? I got you muted, Joe. Sorry about that.
You got to see, in the modern world, we have of entertainment and show business and music world. These things, initially, I can see the sponsors getting panicked. This looks like he might be involved in this, and therefore they all back away. This could turn out, like you said, now he's got 1 million more hits this weekend. This could be a biggest boon in the world to this guy if it turns out he doesn't get arrested, or if he beats a case. If there is a case, he might not have done anything, right? If that changes down the road, he could turn out to be even bigger than he was. But I think the initial pullback, I think, is what happens because, hey, somebody's involved in a bad thing, we back away from him. Can that help or hurt the case? I think you might want to let him know you have more conversation to stay around, or the attorney might say, we'll be around. But I think that's you can't really say the long run of how that's going to go, because we're living a weird world. He could end up being, if he gets convicted, he'll be the greatest singer on Cell Block D, and he'll make $1 billion.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot of people that didn't know him that know him now, so he's definitely at another level of infamy, if you will. And then, can the reaction of sponsors and collaborators ever influence how the public or even a jury views the credibility of someone under investigation? Sadly, it could, but from a law enforcement perspective, that really shouldn't affect the objectivity of you looking into an investigation, correct? Pressure really shouldn't.
It shouldn't at all. Will it? It could affect the jury pool. It could affect, how the courts are just people, and they see and they just don't like this person now, whether he did it or not. They just don't like him. So rulings could go against you, all that kind of stuff. But the investigation, that shouldn't make any difference whatsoever.
And we kind of answered the last question I had. In your experience, can the paradox of rising streams, despite collapse in sponsorship, impact jury perception, or do investigators keep that cultural noise completely separate from their work? So we just covered that. I got to talk about this, Joe, the role of his team. So another dimension investigators may be considering is whether anyone around Burke knew about his alleged connection to Celeste. The Hollywood Hills home where Burke lived before leaving on tour was reportedly rented by his manager. On September 17, 2025, LAPD Robbery Homicide Division executed a search warrant at that address, spending hours inside and collecting multiple items, including electronics and potential forensic evidence. If Celeste's DNA or belongings are tied to that residence, it could suggest she spent time there. That would raise an uncomfortable question. Did others in Burke's circle, including his manager, entourage, or associates, know of her presence? And if they did, were red flags ignored? Now, mind you, David Burke and the manager work for Interscope Records. Not a good look for them. For the music industry, the implications go further than Burke himself. Interscope Records and his management helped craft his rapid rise. If evidence emerges that people within his orbit knew or suspected he was associated with an underage girl, the case stops being about one individual misconduct and becomes about systemic failure. The line between negligence and complicity would become a focus not only for investigators, but also for public opinion, future sponsorship, and potential civil liability. This connects directly to the fallout we just mentioned. Brands and collaborators aren't only distancing themselves for optics, they may also be preemptively shielding themselves from being linked to an artist whose team could face scrutiny. The collapse of his career infrastructure is not just a reflection of lost public trust, but also of potential legal exposure for those who stood closest to him. 3 questions here, Joe. In cases like this, if a suspect's manager or associates rented the property where evidence is found, how closely do investigators scrutinize their potential knowledge or involvement?
100%. 100%. You're going to go to them and you're going to squeeze them. Did you know this girl was staying here? Did you ever see them sleeping in the same room? Did you ever advise him not to sleep in the same room with this girl? Did you ever see them sitting on a couch a little too? And because you know what? You're going to get dragged into it. And again, that goes with just about any kind of a case where you can pressure witnesses and victims by letting them know right now you're not involved. You're a cooperating witness. You're giving us information. The minute you stop being that and we find other things to say you knew about this, that's going to come out. And if they can connect them to that in any way, there's a myriad of laws. You know, the law book is very thick. You can find something in there for everybody. I would certainly pressure them with that and figure out what it is and say, you know, this is going to happen to you, Mr. Vice President of Record Sales, and you, this was your house that you rented, so it's your home where this happened. You should come forward, and that at that point you might see a decision made. Well, one of us has to go, and it's going to be this kid. Here's everything I saw, everything I knew, and I told him to stay away from her. She was too young. I don't know if anything like that was said, but you can see where that would go.
Yeah, and I've seen it's funny where sometimes they have trouble like connecting the main person, but usually the people that allowed it to happen and not do nothing, but was in the know and didn't do the right thing, sometimes they get slammed with the hardest consequences. Because you know what? Right now I can't get Joe, but I know you knew.
Yep,
I know you knew.
I'm going to get somebody and try and drag you in and get you to give me the person who's absolutely responsible for the death of the girl. That's
because that's kind of starts push to getting them to flip.
Yeah.
So I got 2 more questions for this section. Is can liability or suspicion extend to people around them? You just talked about that, such as managers, even record labels, if they ignored warning signs about underage victims, and we just discussed that. From your experience, do law enforcement and prosecutors consider whether corporate or management structures enabled risky behavior, or is the focus almost always limited to the suspect?
Well, it's hard to say. It's something we would probably look at to see, was there a pattern that led to this? Because if you establish a pattern that they knew about it, they allowed it. Is this the first underage girl? Was there another girl that he had, or 5 girls? And now we go talk to them and you find out, oh, he did all these things. This is where he kept videos. Do you know that 2 houses over, he's got a safe in the garage? Oh, things like that. That's how more evidence comes out. Initially, for that, I would say that would be the only reason I would be worried about that. But it wouldn't be the first thing. It would be the victim, what I'd be concerned with, and the killer.
All right.
Whoever that is.
Joe, we're almost wrapped up. I got just the last few sections and the closing. I wanted to revisit one more thing because it is central to the case, the age. This was something that could have focused more on the video I did the other day. But again, I was trying to be a little bit more objective. This is actually this show we're doing right now is actually, I'm just leaning on a lot more facts. So I'm actually leaning towards the fact that this person, David, was more involved than I cared to mention in the first show. So I wanted to be a little bit more objective in my approach. So in California, like Joe mentioned, the law is explicit. The age of consent is 18. Celeste was only 13 when she disappeared and 15 when the remains were found. If Burke had any romantic or sexual involvement with her state and federal law, they leave no room for ambiguity. So under, like Joe mentioned, under the California Penal Code, statutory rape, that's 261.5, any sexual intercourse with a person under 18, regardless of consent, is a crime. Lewd acts with a minor under 16. So engaging in sexual contact with a child under 16 carries even harsher penalties, especially if the perpetrator is over 21, which he wasn't. Child endangerment, placing a child in a situation likely to cause harm or suffering, is criminal in itself. So that's another thing. If they find out she was in the house and they did things in the house that were illegal, like drug use and all this other stuff, that's a whole other skew of charges. On the federal side, if online grooming, enticement, or exploitation occurred through platforms like Discord, TikTok, or Instagram, because that pushes federal charges now, prosecutors could apply coercion and enticement of a minor, prohibits using interstate commerce like the internet to persuade or entice a minor into sexual activity. I mean, now we get kind of a little bit more detail when you look at pictures like these. I mean, what are we really doing here? Mm-hmm. And then I have sexual exploitation of children. If any explicit images were created or shared, penalties escalate to mandatory minimum sentences. The principle underlining all these laws is strictly liability. Even if a child lies about their age online, the burden remains entirely on the adult. Courts have consistently ruled that "I thought she was older" is not a defense because the law assumes adults must err on the side of caution while interacting with minors. Beyond statutes, the psychological element is just as important. Adolescents are more impressionable, more vulnerable to manipulation, and less equipped to consent, not just legally, but developmentally. That power imbalance is why prosecutors emphasize age as the central issue. It reframes a relationship from consensual to exploitive. Now, I got 3 questions for you, this one, Joe. This one kind of you may have touched on earlier, but feel free, let me know if you want to revisit, or maybe there's something fresh here. So how do prosecutors typically present the issue of age in grooming or statutory rape cases, and why is the standard so absolute? I know you kind of touched on that. Is there anything you want to revisit?
Yeah, just real quickly, we want to protect underage people who are vulnerable, and that's really the bottom line. They're vulnerable to older people. Older people have more experience, and by presenting that, and I would present it in a way that would make a point known. I would try and show these examples of a 13-year-old and a 17 or 18-year-old. And I would bring in a psychologist, talk about the differences in the mindsets of those two people. Doesn't mean the girl can't be very sophisticated and the guy not so sophisticated and they're actually closer together. It's still illegal, but that's how they would bring that out. You know, what kind of a person would deal with basically a babe in the woods as opposed to finding a girl your own age, right? And that you really want to set the stage that they were taking advantage, which leans towards the criminal side of the charges that you would have.
Yeah, now this question here I'm very familiar with, because in my position I see a lot of sexual charges where the person will say that they told me they were a different age or I didn't know. So in your experience, how do courts treat claims that the adult was misled about a minor's age? And I love what the courts do. They said, listen, this excuse has been utilized so many times that even if it was legit, it's bastardized. So at this point, the onus will not be on the individual that's underage. You're not going to blame the individual, because in some sense, that's what it is. You're taking full ownership. So it's like, I don't care if they misled you. I don't care if you thought she was younger. The point is, you still did it. So I think it's looked at as it was a bastardized excuse that if we allow that excuse to live, then everybody could just say it.
Right. And I agree. Doesn't mean the defense won't bring it up, but the judge will do one of a couple of things. He'll let them make their point and make their case that, hey, my client was just tricked by this person, or the judge will say, absolutely not. We're not going there.
Yeah, and I think for this one, last question, why is developmental vulnerability not just the number? Why is developmental vulnerability, not just the number, so central in framing cases of grooming and exploitations? Because I think, obviously, my opinion, Joe, for this one, if I just add something, is that yes, also yes and no either way, but a decision comes with consequences. And I think at a certain age, you don't really understand those consequences until you reach a certain age, and then really get an understanding of what the consequences are for sexual acts. Because yes, there are consequences if you don't want to have what those sexual acts can produce.
I agree with you 100%. And we look at that all the time. You can't vote until you're 18. Why? Because you might not have a full understanding of what that vote means. Now, that's a simple one. There is an age of consent, because we know that prior to that age of consent, you are not emotionally or mentally ready to maybe fend off a sexual relationship. It could change your whole life. So we set up those boundaries for real psychological reasons. And they have to be in place because people will take advantage of those less capable to protect themselves.
All right, Joe. And Joe, we are literally almost done. I got 2 more sections with a total together of just 6 questions, 4, 1, and 1. The human cost has 4, section 9 has 1, and the closing has 1 for a wrap up. So guys, I did the human cost. Behind every headline and rumor is a grieving family who lost their daughter. For them, this is not a news story or a legal debate. It's a tragedy that cannot be undone. Celeste's loved ones describe her as a sweet child with a bright smile and big hair, someone who should have had her entire life in front of her. At a vigil in Lake Elsinore, candles flickered as neighbors gathered to mourn, some angry, some heartbroken, all united in disbelief at what had happened to one of their own. The impact has reached her school community as well. Teachers and classmates remember a quiet, respectful student whose absence leaves a painful void. For a community used to seeing her walking with her backpack down neighborhood streets, the knowledge that her life ended under such suspicious and tragic circumstances is almost too much to process. I know a lot of people are thinking that he had a lot of money, David, and he paid the family off and all this other stuff, but you really can't prove that. And I'm not going to go ahead and run with that either, because I'd be grieving. So, but there's also a harder truth that Celeste had run away before. When she disappeared for the first time, there was already signs that she was in contact with an older male online. According to a teacher, They said that she had left home to meet a rapper named David. When she returned, that should have been a flashing red light. Instead, her earlier runaway was treated like many others as a temporary absence that would resolve on its own. So this is part of the human cost too. Repeat runaways are often classified, as we said before, by law enforcement as low risk. The assumption is that they will return home, and so the urgency to investigate is reduced. But for children being groomed, every runaway is not a phase, it's a warning. If those early warning signs are overlooked, the consequences can be catastrophic. Celeste's story shows how a vulnerable child can slip through the cracks and how systemic blind spots can leave families devastated. Now, her death also carries a broader warning. Every day, children interact with adults online, a Discord server, TikTok, Instagram, gaming platforms, Roblox, Minecraft. These platforms collapse the barrier, Fortnite too. These platforms collapse the barrier that once separated teenagers from celebrities and strangers alike. When the adult on the other side of the screen is a public figure, someone admired, idolized, and seen as untouchable, the risks multiply. A young fan may interpret attention from a celebrity as love, validation, or destiny, when in reality it may be grooming. This case is a stark reminder that even innocent online connections can become dangerous, and that the power imbalance between children and admired adults can have devastating consequences. So, Joe, 4 questions here. Tell me which. I don't know if we've answered any, but some of these may be fresh questions. What advice would you give to parents today about monitoring their children's digital lives without isolating them, especially when the adult reaching out might be a celebrity they admire?
All right. So you say to yourself, I'm a parent, you're a parent. I raised my kids. I paid attention to them. My 3 boys and my daughter were very, very good kids, but I wanted to protect them at all costs. So I wanted to know where they were going. I wanted to know who they were going with. I would drive them and drop them off. Sometimes I would talk to the parents at the house they were going to. These are the kind of things that I took for granted of raising my children. I told all my children, this is your house, and we're loving here. This is great. But I will search those rooms anytime I want. There'll be no drugs in my house. We're not going to have guns in it. No, we're not doing any of that. And they knew the rules, right? So today, in today's world, this reality that when my kids were young, I could keep a bad person outside of my home. The internet allows that bad person right in. Matter of fact, when we were kids, we said, don't get in a car with strangers. Now we tell people, invite all the strangers into the house and tell them where you live, right? It's the parent of it. Get the programs that look at the stroke keys. I would never betray my child till your child's laying dead in the street and you say, gee, I wish I would have known where they were going. You have to do what you have to do to protect your children. If you see something that's wrong, call the local police, find the juvenile officer. Most of them are good people, and they'll be like, hey, I'll give you some advice. Not everybody, but most of them would be, okay, let me talk to the kid. Let me come over. Let me tell you what I can do. If we're not proactive, there are demons out in that world that know they can get to your kids through the internet. And our kids are on it all day long. All day long, that's where they go. And you get some attention from somebody who's famous, somebody who's very attractive, somebody who seems really cool, and you get that attention, makes you feel good, draws you in like a moth to the flame, right? We have to be aware of it as parents and pay attention to where they're going and what they're doing, or there's going to be more Celestes.
All right, Joe, and then I got, in your experience, what strategies actually work for building trust with teenagers so they'll disclose online interactions before it's too late? I want to mention one thing, though, to kind of compliment what you said. One thing in my house that gets to me, maybe it's a pet peeve, and I don't know if it's because I work around inmates all day or not. I don't like lying, even on the smallest of scales. I just want to showcase that that's not tolerated. It's just something that I know if the person gets too comfortable with it, if they feel they can lie freely without caring about how it affects the other person. So I do want them to know how it affects me. Then their stories could just get bigger and bigger, and then they can wind up protecting things that I should be in the know of. So it's like I want to trust my child, which I do, but once they start lying, they lose that credibility. Then there's the other side where I'm going to check your stuff now. You want to lie to me on the smallest of things. Now I'm going to be extra vigilant with you, and you're going to earn that credibility. I don't care how small the lie is. Like with my kids, homework. Kids, going through homework's a whole nother thing. They do something one way and it's wrong, and you try to help them, and they're like, well, that's what the teacher said to do, and none of it's true. And then you're sitting there going through all these layers when I just want to help the person do the homework. And you wind up getting frustrated because it's not that you're frustrated because the child doesn't understand the homework. You're frustrated because they're lying, and you're going through all these barriers just to finally be able to help the individual.
Right.
I don't have time for all that nonsense. So I expect honesty right from the get-go. But Joe, in your experience, what strategies actually work for building trust with teenagers so they'll disclose online interactions before it's too late? And I'm assuming there'll be a certain age where you don't monitor it as much because they've earned a level of credibility. But when they're young, you're monitoring it.
Right. And I think I have to say, with my kids when they were younger, they weren't online like kids are today. They just weren't online like it is now. You know, they did other stuff, but they did the phones. I guess they were on TikTok and some of these other places. My daughter and her friends, and she was like, when somebody would say something or pop on and say something really uncomfortable, she would tell me because it was uncomfortable and she didn't like it. The problem I think you have, and this is where how do you build that relationship of trust, is you have to understand you trust but verify, because you know what? You start to get to be a certain age and you want to have those conversations. Maybe you're intrigued by someone who's older and coming on to you, and you think that's really great. And, hey, Dad, I just want you to know I really like talking to this guy and he's 22. They're probably not going to tell you that. Hey, Dad, my buddies were showing me these pictures. Oh, it's really cool. They're not going to tell you that. So I always use the example of my daughter of being concerned that somebody would say something that she saw as disgusting or ugly or horrible. She would tell me, I can't believe this guy came on and said this, that, and the other thing. And we blocked him. We all blocked him. Once they get older, you have to hope you have built that trust where they understand that it's dangerous. And I think that's the only way really to protect them, to let them know how dangerous this stuff is. None of that stuff on the internet is real. It's all scams. It's all people trying to get over on you and take advantage of you as best as they can, whether it's your money, your body, your music, anything you want. They're going to try and take advantage of you if they can. So that's probably all I can tell you. If I could figure out how to work out the entire teenager thing, I'd be writing books on that.
Yeah, but you know what? You're right. You want to hear something funny? The trust versus verify, like as I mentioned with my kids, I think at first they try to see what they can get over on you. So you got to show that you're on point, that you're not naive. You don't blindly trust a kid at 11, 10, 13, whatever. They're too young. So it's not even about trust at that point. It's my job to have oversight because you're going to make bad choices. So, that's where I think the parents have to understand that as well. That is your responsibility. It's like, well, I trust my child. Okay, you can trust your child all you want, but the kids at that age make stupid choices.
And that's the thing. So, do you want to be their friend or their parent and get them through that hard spot so that you can be friends later on, that they survived all those crazy things they could get involved in?
Right.
It's your parent. I love anything.
Joe, it's right. It's the evolution. And then later on, when you helped you build this rapport, sometimes it's the fact that the trust is built because you don't want to hurt each other, which to me is a more powerful connection than not getting caught. Like as my kids grow older, I don't want them to say, well, I'll never lie to my dad because he'll catch me. I don't want them saying that because that's just, do the wrong thing when nobody's looking and it's good. No, I want my kids to say, I don't want to lie to my dad because it's going to hurt my dad. Or it's going to understand character. Yeah, I want that to be a true connection. And I'm not saying that they're going to make choices that have to be filtered through me their whole life. That's not the point. The point is, I want us to have an honest relationship, and I want the relationship to be honest, whatever the choices may be. I just want the relationship to be filtered to a level of honesty that shows a vulnerability towards each other. That if you lie to me, no matter how small that lie may be, it does affect me. It does. And as I said, just working in a facility where I work with con artists and all that other stuff, it starts off with the comfortability of little lies.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts small and it grows big like a snowball.
Yeah, and it's very antisocial because when you lie to someone, I mean, I'm not talking about, little lies like, oh, you look good in this dress when they really don't. I get that. That's not about, selfishness. That's about, well, maybe it is selfishness. You want to avoid the conflict, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do.
But this is more about the fact that, you know what, I care enough for this individual that this is who we are, because I'm not going to lie to them because I care about this person so much. I don't want them to lie to me.
Right.
It's a powerful dynamic. And Joe, this is in your area of expertise. How can schools and communities play a role in prevention beyond what families can do at home? So a partnership, maybe?
Well, you should partner with the parents, and you should, back in the day, there was the Scared Straight program where basically, you had kids were told the truth, what it was like to go to jail, and they were scared. And then and you say, gee, that's too much. But I think messaging is important at the school to say what is dangerous. Let them know this stuff is dangerous. When you hear something, do a program on it. This happened, and talk about it so that they understand. Some of these sites are where pedophiles are all over the place, and you got these kids all over because they think that the cartoon animes are cool, but in the meantime, you got these 40-year-old pedophiles in there trying to get to these kids. So I think by the school's messaging, not that you can't go online, not that you're too stupid to go online, but when you go online, be aware there's sharks in the water. Pay attention and maybe give them some examples that have already happened to people. This is how they didn't realize there was a shark in the water till it bit them. Don't you fall prey to that. So they can make informed decisions about somebody coming on and talking to them. That's how you can support them without talking down to them.
Yeah, and guys, be advised, the schools are very aware of what your children do, and probably better than we are because they're around the kids all day. They hear dialogue, so they know what your kids are into. So you definitely should be listening to the schools, because I know even my wife as a teacher, when she sees that there's a trend going on, she looks into the trend, and if there's any concerns, her and her little network of teachers kind of figure it out and then decide what they have to do next. And then the last question I have here, this is more practical, is when a child has a history of running away tied to online contact with adults, what should investigators and child protection services do differently to prevent tragedy? I know we touched on this earlier before,
Yep.
But anything you want to revisit here?
No, I'll just leave a caveat to everybody out there. When it comes to missing persons, you can't take any case as routine. You can't take any case as a nuisance. Every single time, that one time could be the time that they get snatched up, that they get killed, they get dumped in a field, because it was different this time. And then you're doing an investigation, and everybody's saying, geez, why didn't we take it more seriously? Well, because they did it 52 times. That's not our job to worry about. We have to do it over and over and over. Our job is to investigate. And if we make it policy, if we make it priority that we will investigate these things, yeah, you might be running around. You might be having some personnel dedicate time to something that's simple 3 times in a row. The 4th time, you might be saving somebody's life. It's worth it.
And the last 2 questions come from here. So what do we still don't know? So for all the headline speculation, online debates, the truth of this case is still incomplete. Many of the most important questions remain unanswered. Let's go over them and wrap it up. We still don't know the cause of Celeste's death. Was it homicide, overdose, neglect, or something else? Until the coroner releases findings, every theory is only speculation. We don't know when she died or how long her body remained in the Tesla before it was discovered. That timeline is crucial. Did her death happen closer to when she went missing in 2024? I mean, could she have been in the car that long? Or more recently in 2025? The answers will reshape the entire investigation. We don't know the true nature of her relationship with Burke. Was it romantic, coercive, platonic, or something far more complicated? Until investigators can piece together digital records and personal testimony, the nature of their connection remains a mystery. And there's still a confusion over who exactly was referenced in his online interactions and art. Discord chats, live stream clips, and even the unreleased track Celeste may not all point to Celeste Rivas. Another young woman by the same name has also been connected to Burke's online world. Sorting out which Celeste appears in these contexts will be critical for investigators. Without that clarity, even compelling evidence could lose its weight in court. Finally, we don't know whether charges will be filed at all. Law enforcement is reviewing digital messages, tattoos, and alleged unreleased songs, but none of this has yet been confirmed as courtroom evidence. Rumors about Discord chat, sightings in videos, and symbolic tattoos will continue to circulate, but investigators must separate truth from fiction through authenticated logs, verified testimony, and careful forensic analysis. The public wants answers now, but cases like this can take months, even years to build. Joe, second to last question for you. In high-profile cases like this, what timeline should the public realistically expect before investigators decide whether or not to bring charges? And why is patience so critical in building a case that will hold up court? And I know we have a public figure out there where pressure pressure for answers come quick. But in reality, sometimes taking time is where the case builds.
Yeah, 100%. You don't go forward until you have a case built. That can be sometimes very quick. The evidence is all right in front of you. It's very clear. You can make an arrest. You can go to court. Schedule everything where you have to do, because it's obvious. In a situation like this, we have no idea who did what to who and when. This could take quite a while. It takes a long time. For toxicology itself can take 2-3 months sometimes to get that back. So you're not going to hear anything for 2-3 months. When we look and see video, trying to find all that video, piece it together, enhance the video, talk to people, interview people, find out all these internet addresses and send investigators to talk to them. You take your time, you present the case when it's ready to be presented. When you're ready to say, okay, if somebody had to hear my case today to prove this person did it, I'm ready. Until then, you don't do it. You don't rush a case because of pressure. And sometimes that does happen. They rush to make an arrest, and it turns out they did it wrong. They got the wrong thing. They didn't do the right warrant. They missed evidence. You investigate until you're ready to go. And then as a team, you decide, let's move forward. We're ready to prosecute and hold people accountable.
All right, here's our closing thoughts. But one last question for you, Joe. So this case is where fame collides with tragedy. On one side is a rising musician celebrated for turning isolation into art and admired by millions of fans. And on the other is a vulnerable teenager whose life ended far too soon, leaving a grieving family and a community demanding answers. Between them lies an investigation that's still in motion, weighed down by speculation, fueled by rumors, and slowed by the painstaking process of gathering evidence. At the core, though, the David case is not about scandal. It's about how easily children can be groomed and exploited in the digital age. It's about how admiration, especially for someone famous, can be turned into vulnerability. And it's about human cost when early warning signs like repeated runaways are not met with urgency. As this story unfolds, the responsibility falls on all of us. Investigators to separate fact from fiction, the public to resist rushing to judgment, and families and communities to learn from Celeste's story. The focus must remain on truth, justice for Celeste, and protecting other young people from suffering the same fate. Joe, final question. Given everything we discussed, the digital evidence, grooming concerns, and unanswered questions, what lessons can both law enforcement and parents take from this case to prevent tragedies like this in the future?
Well, that's actually a very good question. It's a very wide-ranging question, because you have the factor of the internet, meeting people on the internet. You have parenting concerns. You have young kids, and maybe they're suffering from personality disorders. They're suffering from low self-esteem, and they connect with somebody. How are you paying attention to these children to make sure that you see something's up and you can help them, get them counseling if they need it, get them involved in things? Our police officers have got to take these things seriously and investigate them seriously. Even if the kid comes home 5 minutes after you finish 3 hours worth of paperwork, it's better that that kid is home and than to worry about you doing the paperwork. So the lessons learned here is that these kids go missing all the time. Children end up violated, murdered. We don't get some of them back ever because they're out there in the world. Doing what is right each and every time means all of us paying attention to what's going on. Look out for our kids. Look out for other people that need the help. And law enforcement, do the best you can every day so that if it was your kid, you could go to bed at night saying, we did all we could. And that's the lesson learned from all of this.
Yeah, for me, it's just in partnership with Joe said, I always tell people, don't live in denial. You know, Celeste may have lived out in California, but, you know, what happened to her resonates all over. I mean, sometimes people think they're safe because nothing like that happens in their home, when I'm sure families like this that have suffered through this think the same thing, and then they're not prepared for what happens when it does. So, I mean, I guess the key is don't live in denial. You know, take the lessons amongst the information we provide. There's lessons here to be learned. So if you're following it, hopefully you follow it to look for lessons that could be applied to make your life safer, or even to provide those lessons to people that you love so their life could be safer. That's why we devoted over 2 hours on this, because ultimately, if this gets into the right hands, and we save one person. Job well done. 2 hours well spent. Joe, anything like to say in closing? Where can I find you? What do you got going on lately?
Okay, so you can hear my show in 2 different places. On the audio, you can go all of the places where you get your podcasts, and it's the Blue Heart podcast, right? So you can go find it there. Blue Heart Webcast is what we actually call it on YouTube, youtube.com/@Blue Heart Webcast. And for all of you who out there who investigate, all of you who want to learn about investigation, all of you who want to be able to look at a story on the news and try and glean some things out of it, I'm telling you, get my book here, The Investigation. All right. It's blue360media.com or on Amazon. The Investigation is a soup to nuts, how to conduct a real, and this is a double homicide investigation. Get that and learn how to do these things, and you'll be more educated. If you're an investigator, or if you're just a person who wants to know about this stuff, it'll make more sense to you. And the other book is The Interview, right? This is how to conduct this interview. All these things I'm talking about, the psychological stuff, you can use it in every part of your life, not just a criminal interview. So those are the 2 things I would tell you to do. Listen to our podcast, webcast, and get the books. I think we'll all be better off.
Yes. And I got my inmate manipulation book that does well, so the guys get a chance. It's Inmate Manipulation Decoded right here. Available on Amazon. It's a good book, good read. But guys, again, this is good information. I have a lot of cases I'm following up on, so I'm starting to get my little momentum going. I'm sure I'm going to call Joe back on. I got a couple of cases that I'm waiting for some updates on. I got some court cases coming up that I want to follow up on, and then bring a couple of my guests back on, Joe, Denise, Sean Wald, and kind of discuss, where we're at in these next steps of these cases, including the Emmanuel Harrow case I'm following up on. I'm going to follow up on Laken Snelling. I'm going to follow up on Christina Fermola, the teacher pedophile. Kohlberger kind of running thin with. That's pretty much wrapped itself up. And then we're definitely going to be following up on this case as well, because I found this case to be very, very interesting. So for the people that recommended it to me, thank you for the trust. And hopefully I did you guys justice. Joe couldn't have been a better guest. And I just can't imagine having somebody else that could even provide even close to what you're able to provide to this audience. So, Joe, I truly, 2 hours and change, there's no greater love and dedication than giving that amount of time to a topic like this, knowing that in the end it can help people. So thank you, Joe.
You're very welcome.
All right, guys. And as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Stay safe.